from Washington, D.C. as well?
First, thanks so much for having me. I do agree that we hope to find a diplomatic solution to the issue on North Korea. North Korea has continually moved forward to develop a nuclear weapons capability and long-range delivery capabilities. That presents a threat to the region and a threat to the world. The best thing to do now is to enforce and implement the sanctions that are in place. And China, the United States, and the international community should be looking for diplomatic and economic pressures that can bring North Korea back to the negotiating table to roll back and then dismantle its nuclear weapons program.
Professor Chung, how do you look at the DPRK's assertion that it needs nuclear weapons when it already possesses a lot of conventional weapons and sometimes quite advanced one? With Seoul, for instance, so close by, Pyongyang could already make a huge amount of damage with these conventional weapons.
The Mike Whitney, well-known economist, now residing in the state of Washington, well-known writer around the world, the last 3-4 days, two most recent articles. The article title was "The Problem is Washington, Not North Korea." The next day he came up with the article, "The U.S. pushed North Korea develop the nukes, yes or no?" And I think that even the U.S. government now, the Trump administration, starting from the Trump, the Tillerson, at McMaster, and the James Mattis, and the top leadership acknowledged, no matter what the U.S. has done the last 30 some years, everything has failed. And again, back to the point, the issue of the peace, what the message the DPRK leadership sent to the Washington was, let's sit and find a way to bring about the peace regime, meaning concluding the peace treaty by replacing the armistice agreement, which has not been concluded until this day for 64 years. I think the time is coming that the Northeast Asia and the Korean Peninsula may face a new wave of the dialogue and engagement rather than the fighting or the conflict or the threatening with the nuclear weapons, etc.
Ms. Bell, we haven't really heard the Trump administration talk so much about this aspect of things, that is the peace mechanism, or how to come up with a peace treaty to formally end the Korean War, which is only kind of stalled by an armistice agreement. What is the kind of discussion going on in Washington, D.C. concerning this aspect, if there is at all?
Not a lot at this point, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that President Trump has yet to fill out a leadership team on national security in the Departments of Defense or Departments of State. We do not have ambassadors in South Korea or Japan or China as of yet, and I think that kind of a discussion can only happen with a full national security team in place.
Do you think that is a very important piece of the puzzle in order to achieve the goal of denuclearizing the Korean Peninsula?
Absolutely. The hard technical work that would have to go into any sort of agreement with the North Koreans is going to be done by the Department of State, by the Department of Defense. You need experts in place, and you need leaders directing those experts who have a clear and consistent idea of what the U.S. goal is.
Professor Chung, go ahead. You wanted to add.
The issue is very simple. If and when U.S. stops its aggressive or the DPRK policy as it has kept the last 70 years, then the peace will arrive. The DPRK, through their military parade, as I believe it, as their political message, no matter what you have done to us, or no matter what you have done, including economic sanctions, the military, the nuclear, the war threats, it hasn't worked out. And now only two options on the table, war or peace. What I said in the beginning, I believe the U.S. is about to ready. As of yesterday, the Leon Panetta and the William Perry and all the previous State Department the Pentagon and the CIA major figures all called for dialogue and engagement, not anymore the war talk, warmongering, the acts from the Washington.
Well, that would be good if that is the message. However, we are also hearing, for instance, on Wednesday, the U.S. Secretary of State Tillerson said that the U.S. was considering relisting the DPRK as a state sponsor of terrorism. Ms. Bell, why do you think Tillerson came out to make this kind of a speech, and what difference do you think made in practice if it is, if the DPRK is indeed relisted as such?
I don't think that would do anything to help the situation. It's unclear why that was a focus point when our top concern should be the continued missile testing and nuclear weapons testing. It's important to remember that North Korea is the only country in the world in this century that has been testing nuclear weapons. The question is why. I agree that we should be looking for diplomatic solutions, but that also involves North Korea stopping aggressive posturing and testing programs.
They say the same thing. If U.S. stops its aggressive and very the direct threat, even the decapitation of the leadership of the North, with the annual, throughout the year, the very aggressive nuclear war games within the Korean Peninsula will not help
So it's a
the
stalemate.
situation ever.
So it's a stalemate we're
I
looking
agree.
at. Yeah. What could possibly be the way out?
On the question of the sponsor of terrorism,
Yes.
I like the question, whom call the sponsor of terrorism? Even Trump, even the former, the Michael, the Flint, the former, the security advisor who was already ousted from the position, they questioned who was behind the Islamic State. And the Trump and the Michael Flint challenged it was Obama and Hillary was behind. I mean, whom you are the sponsor of terrorism? So we need to actually go back to the major real issues, not creating any more the confusion and the demonizing of a state, the independent country who only crime they have done, the DPRK, to the US and the world is to challenge American power. That's the only crime they have done last 60-some years.
Ms. Bell, do you want to really quickly respond to that? But yeah, 20 seconds if you want.
Well, again, I think we should remember that North Korea was a party to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. It took obligations onto itself to not develop a nuclear weapons capability, and then it abandoned that commitment to the international community. So I don't think that North Korea has no blame in the situation that exists. I do agree that all parties should be looking to de-escalate the tensions
Yeah. Well,
and look for ways to get back to the negotiating table.
Yes.
Sure, in Chinese we say it took two hands to make a clap, right? At this moment, it also took efforts from all sides to de-escalate the situation. Thank you very much, Alexandra Bell, joining us from Washington, D.C., and Mr. Chong Kyu joining us from Beijing. And
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And
Thank
now
you.
this is my take on the situation. That's it for our week-long focus on the DPRK issue. But the tensions continue, and I'm sure the discussions will too continue in the weeks ahead, especially as we await the April 25th celebrations of the founding of the DPRK's army. China has made its position loud and clear. It is resolutely opposed to a nuclearized Korean peninsula and insists on peaceful means to achieve that. As China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi said, whoever brings war to the Korean peninsula will also have to shoulder the historic responsibility and pay a corresponding price. We'll continue to keep a close watch. to a much softer topic. April 23rd was designated World Book Day in 1995 by UNESCO. Chinese writers have been attracting attention from book lovers around the world for the past few years. In 2014, 93-year-old Professor Xu Yuanchong became the first Asian winner of the Aurora Borealis Prize, the world's top prize for translation. Xu has dedicated himself to translating traditional Chinese literary works into English and French, or vice versa. Chinese science fiction authors also won the Hugo Award for Best Novel for the past 2 years. The Hugo Award is referred to as the Nobel Prize of the science fiction world. And Cao Wenxuan became the first Chinese author to win the coveted Hans Christian Andersen Award for children's literature. Through translation, Western readers can now appreciate not only classic Chinese literature, but also more modern works, even the trending Chinese online fantasy novels. What are the challenges and rewards for the translators, and what role they have played in making foreign books accessible to Chinese readers and vice versa? I'm joined by two translators, Lai Jingping, popularly known as RWX, who is the founder of the website Wuxia World, an influential platform translating Chinese fantasy novels into English, and Zhang Yaling, a lecturer at China Foreign Affairs University, who translated Twilight, the famous novel by Stephenie Meyer, into Chinese. So thank you very much to both of you for joining our show. Let me come to you two first, Mr. Lai. Your pen name is RWX. It comes from a character in the Chinese martial arts book, and you also translated many fantasy novels. How would you best describe Chinese fantasy novels? Do they differ significantly from Western fantasy?
Right. Well, thank you so much for having me on the show, Shane. I really appreciate it. I think one of the reasons why these novels right now have attracted such an audience is because they have a lot of similarities to Western fantasy novels, but they're been wrapped in a sort of a Chinese skin, so to speak. It's been reskinned in a way that makes it very fresh and appealing, yet not too foreign. Like when we first translated almost 10 years ago the traditional wuxia novels by Jin Yong and Gu Long, these are novels that I loved, but then we didn't get a lot of views. But these days we're getting much more, and I think that's because Chinese fantasy web novels, they really resonate a lot more with with the popular culture than some of the more Chinese stuff that we've worked on in the past.
Ms. Zhang, now the Twilight has a huge following in China because your version is the only version so far that a huge number of Chinese people can get access to at this moment. What prompted you to take up this book when you were 26-year-old?
Okay, thank you for having me here. The Twilight Saga, the target audience is the teenagers, so it is quite easy for them to take in the Western trendy vampire culture. And I was 26 when I was translating the book. I was much younger at that time, and just one day my classmate came to me and asked me whether I'm interested in translating a novel. Then I said yes, and then it became a very popular one. I never expected that actually at the very beginning, and I was attracted to that story, to the love story, and I think it is also appeal to the teenagers in our country.
I mean, to both of you, have you imagined the kind of feedback that you would have received? For instance, Mr. Lai, it is reported that your website has 3.5 million views a day. I heard some people even have donated money to encourage you to update your work more quickly, and the fact that you are on our show today make you miss one of your upload. Did you ever expect that Chinese fantasy novels would prove so popular abroad?
Well, actually, first of all, the 3.5 is a bit of an old number. We're up to around 5.2 to 5.5 million now.
Okay.
So we've still been growing. No, I mean, it's been absolutely shocking to, I think, to all of us. I mean, again, when we first started translating a lot of traditional novels 10 years ago, if we had like maybe 50 to 100 viewers for each chapter we put up, we would be ecstatic. We would be so happy. So for us to now have hundreds of thousands of people coming every single day and doing millions of page views, it still boggles my mind, and I'm blessed to have a chance to get involved in this.
Ms. Zhang, did you also expect the kind of feedback from your translation? What are people telling you now that they know that you are the one who put these English words into Chinese for them?
I think one of the most impressive feedback is actually from my student. I taught a course of translation last year, and one of my students wrote to me saying that she read Twilight Saga while she was a high school student, and she liked it very much. And she told me that she wanted to translate this kind of novel in the future. That's why she chose translation as her major. I think what you do can actually inspire people around you to do something similar and something meaningful. I think that's one of the most important reward for a translator.
Mr. Lai, how are the Chinese web novels received by foreign readers compared with the classical Chinese novels of the older times, for instance, Journey to the West or all of these books that are known to be coming from China?
Right. Well, I mean, I think the numbers don't lie. Whether we're talking about the oldest stuff, such as the Journey to the West, the Three Kingdoms, or even the somewhat newer stuff like stuff by Jin Yong, the numbers we're seeing right now on Wuxia World, it just blows everything away. And I think, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of that is because a lot of these current fantasy novels, they draw heavily upon Western games, Western movies. For example, one of our most popular novels for a time, Tales of Demons and Gods, Yao Shen Ji, it had concepts such as capturing monsters and then mixing them together and making them level up. I mean, this is stuff that's really, it's from stuff like Pokemon, it's from stuff like World of Warcraft. So it's a lot of stuff that, it's already a shared culture, a shared gamer culture, a shared anime culture. And what we're doing is, what the Chinese market has done is they've made it their own. They've taken this really good stuff and they've wrapped it in, Chinese culture, like my translation of Desolate Era has Chinese figures like Suputi, Sun Wukong, Hou Yi. And so it takes a really old stuff, but wraps it in a fresh way, but also in a way which is really resonating with the readers in the West, because it comes from a lot of the same source material, a lot of the same games, a lot of the same anime.
That part of it obviously made your work easy, but what about the difficult part? What is the most difficult thing you find in your work?
The most difficult part, obviously, is the actual translation. The toughest part, and I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but when you're doing fantasy translation, you're working with things that don't exist. So a lot of times when you're going from Chinese to English, you really have to make up brand new English words that didn't exist in the past. So
Like
it's
what?
really a testing. They have all sorts of these random fantasy
Golems,
creatures,
for instance?
and no, that stuff's easy. But like, for example, you will have these random dragons like with a 3 or 4 part names, and then you're trying to make it sound pithy, make it sound cool in English.
Yeah.
And it's really hard. That's the hardest part. Translating is easy. Translating and making it sound cool, making it sound good, that's really the hard part.
Ms. Zhang,
Yes,
do you
yes.
find a similar problem?
Yes, I totally agree with him, right. When I translate Twilight, I think the most difficult part is to translate those magic words, like the magic used by the vampires. So how to make them also sound also magic in Chinese, I think that is a really tough work.
Okay, finally, Sunday will be World Book Day. So if you were to recommend one book to our audience, which one would you recommend? Your own works.
Yes. Twilight.
Twilight? Yeah, Mr. Lai.
Well, I mean, on my side, if we're talking web novels, my translation of Coiling Dragon is not recommended by me, but it's recommended by a lot of the readers because it's a complete book. It's got 800 chapters, and we have, it's a book where a lot of the concepts and the names are all, Western names to begin with. They had Linlei, Linley, or you had Baruch. So you have names that are really Western to begin with, and that just makes it really easy for Western readers to get into it. Because, the name, it makes people resonate with the characters and care about the characters when you can actually remember their names. Okay. So a lot of my readers recommend Coiling Dragon. There's a lot of good stuff out there. Just go read, guys.
Okay, Coiling Dragon or Twilight. Thank you very much, Ms. Zhang Yaling, a lecturer at the China Foreign Affairs University, and RWX, founder of the website Wuxia World. And here is
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Here is my last point. 2 translators, one working from Chinese into English, the other from English to Chinese. They're different processes, but both perform a similar role. You need to be equally good in both languages to be able to do this job well. Actually, I studied English language and literature when I was at university, and I've always had a special regard for literary work. But because of my job, I find myself talking in the simplest language about things that are not at all fancy or romantic. This discussion just makes me want to go home and bury myself once again into a nice book. And as is the weekend coming up, maybe you'll be doing that too. That's all for this edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin. As always, you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter using the handle The Point with LX. You can watch our live show by downloading the CGTN Live application. You can watch our previous shows on the CGTN channel of YouTube. Click on the playlist and look for The Point with Liu Xin. Thanks for watching. See you again on Monday.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
I'm Dong Shi, live in Beijing. Welcome to the World Today on CGTN. Investigators in France have found a note defending Islamic State next to the body of the gunman who opened fire on police officers on Thursday. One officer was killed and 2 others wounded in the incident on the iconic Champs-Élysées. Local media named the attacker as a 39-year-old French national who was arrested in February for trying to kill police officers but released due to a lack of evidence. 3 members of the attacker's family have since been arrested. Another man suspected of being linked to the attack turned himself in to the police. The attack happened just days before Sunday's presidential election, with Prime Minister Bernard Cazeneuve announcing that more than 50,000 police officers will be deployed to ensure security. Europe has faced a series of terrorist attacks over the past 3 years. Our Yang Zhao has a recap of the incidents since 2015.
In November 2015, a series of coordinated attacks occurred in Paris. 3 suicide bombers struck outside the Stade France in Saint-Denis, a northern suburb of Paris, during the football match. This was followed by several mass shootings and a massive hostage situation in a Bataclan theater. The attackers killed 130 people, including 89 at the theater, and left 368 people injured. Half a year later, also in France, at least 84 people were killed and 303 were injured when a truck plowed into a crowd during Bastille Day celebrations in Nice. ISIL claimed responsibility for this attack. In March 2016, 32 people were killed and hundreds wounded in suicide bomb attacks in Brussels, Belgium. 2 suicide bombers blew themselves up at a Brussels airport, while another ignited in a train at a busy metro station, killing 16 more passengers. Later in the same year in Berlin, 12 people were killed and dozens injured after a truck attacked on a popular street Christmas market. A failed Tunisian asylum seeker named Anis Amri was suspected of carrying out this attack. He was shot dead by Italian police 4 days after the attack. On the other side of the English Channel, in March 2017, London attacker Khalid Massoud mowed down pedestrians on Westminster Bridge, killing 4 people and injuring many others. He was shot dead by armed police later. Most recently in Sweden, a hijacked beer truck plowed into pedestrians at the central Stockholm department store in April 2017, leaving 4 people dead and 15 injured. All the attacks in Belgium, Germany, Britain, and Sweden were claimed by terrorist group ISIL. Yang Zhao, CGTN.
The federal prosecutors in Germany have said that the man who allegedly carried out a bomb attack on the Borussia Dortmund soccer team bus last week acted alone. Spokesperson for the prosecutor's office said the 28-year-old was arrested near the central town of Tübingen.
We chased him via suspicious dog purchases, and by now we know that the accused bought 3 different derivatives on Borussia Dortmund equities with which he bet on falling stock prices. Most of those were bought on April 11th, the day of the attack. In order to buy those put options, the accused took out a loan of several thousand euros.
The German-Russian citizen faces charges of attempted murder and will appear in court soon. While investigators say there is no indication of possible helpers, they are continuing to look into the possibility that he had accomplices. And Curler said there is enough evidence to keep him in custody. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani and hardline rival Ibrahim Raisi have been both approved to run in the upcoming presidential election. A government vetting body gave the green light, while denying former President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad from running. Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei had previously advised Ahmadinejad not to run, with his attempt to register as a candidate widely seen as a public snub to the supreme leader. Rouhani and Raisi will likely face off on the issue of the economy and the nuclear deal signed in 2015. Rouhani has highlighted the deal as his signature achievement during his past 4 years in office. The final candidate list is expected to be announced between April 26th and 27th, with the election set to take place on May 19th. And Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov in the capital of Kazakhstan, Astana, on Friday. During the meeting, Wang said that China and Russia have maintained close contact on regional and international issues, including an investigation into alleged chemical weapon attacks in Syria and the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Wang also said that the 2 countries will continue to deepen cooperation, paving the way for next month's Belt and Road Forum, which takes place in Beijing. China has criticized the visit by dozens of Japanese lawmakers to Japan's Yasukuni Shrine for war dead, regarded as a symbol of Japan's past militarism.
China has always firmly opposed these kinds of acts by Japanese politicians. Japan should abide by the spirit of the 4 political documents between the 2 countries and implement their 4-point agreement reached in 2014. We urge Japan to reflect on its history of aggression and draw a line under militarism. Japan should earn the trust of its neighbors and the international community through action.
Around 95 Japanese lawmakers, along with an aide to Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, visited the Yasukuni Shrine. Abe sent a ritual offering to the site. The Japanese Prime Minister visited the shrine in person in December 2013 after becoming premier the previous year. Chinese Vice Premier Liu Yandong is on an official visit to Jordan. During a seminar to mark the 40th anniversary of diplomatic ties, Liu said that both countries are keen to boost ties in various areas and explore opportunities for greater cooperation. Jordan's health minister Mahmoud Shayab said several cooperation agreements have been reached and that there was room for increased cooperation in tourism. And Prince Faisal bin Hussein also spoke with Liu, with both sides discussing developments in the Middle East and efforts to reach political solutions to regional crises. Nigeria is struggling to contain its worst outbreak of meningitis in more than 20 years. Latest figures show the death toll has hit at least 745, and most of the victims are children. From Lagos, CGTN's Deji Batmas has this report.
This is what the outbreak looks like at the moment. Nearly 750 dead, more than 250 in the past week alone, and more than 800 suspected cases. The UN says most of the victims are between 5 and 14 years old. And this are just official figures. The true picture could be far worse. Almost all the cases are in 5 northern states, which are remote and difficult to reach. Some experts blame the slow response from authorities.
The reasons are obvious. One, we look at even in terms of response by the government, it was half and in between. As at 2 weeks ago, the governor who was supposed to be the leading person to drive that response was not totally convinced. There are financial challenges, there are human resources challenges, there are vaccine challenges.
There's also no locally available vaccine for this strain of the disease. The government has had to import around 500,000 doses, but they're not enough. So medics are waiting for more supplies.
All around the country, we need about 21 million doses of vaccines to be able to take care of this meningitis epidemic. But what we're seeing is that the WHO is bringing 500,000, which is not sufficient for Zamfara alone. UK government is bringing 800,000 doses of vaccine, which is not even sufficient. So we're seeing, a great shortage in terms of the quantity of vaccines available to drive our response to this epidemic.
Local production would have made a huge difference, but drug makers say the costs are too high. Meningitis is caused by various bacteria and thrives in cramped living conditions. In 1996, a single outbreak killed more than 11,000 Nigerians. Government agencies say they are trying to raise awareness about the disease while they await more vaccine doses. For now, mass vaccination has taken place in only 2 of the 5 worst hit states. The fresh batch of vaccine simply has to come in very fast and quickly deployed to the other 3 worst affected states if Nigeria hopes to stop this disease from spreading and killing more people. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
To The Hague now, where the leaders of the Netherlands, Denmark and Republic of Ireland have met to discuss the UK's exit from the European Union. The 3 countries have similar outlooks on free trade and competition issues, with Irish Prime Minister Enda Kenny saying they're likely to feel the greatest negative impact of Brexit. The meeting is seen as a sign that the 3 countries plan to coordinate their strategy on Brexit. The 27 EU members that will remain after Britain leaves have repeatedly pledged to maintain a united front in negotiations with Britain and avoid divisions that could be exploited by London. For more analysis on post-Brexit Europe, journalist and broadcaster Subi Shah joins us now from London via Skype. Thank you for joining us. What do you think are the main points of contention between the UK and the EU regarding Brexit?
Actually, I'm not entirely sure about the UK and EU. What I'm more concerned about is where it leaves China. Where does it leave India or people outside, countries outside of the EU? I really consider that the UK needs to work a lot harder on China and India, especially things like Hinkley Point in Somerset, because the EU has cast doubts on China's investment on those sensitive areas. And actually, if we're going to Brexit, Brexit means Brexit, as Theresa May says. We're going to have to concentrate on things outside.
Once Brexit happens, where does that leave the UK on the world stage?
It leaves the UK floundering for friends outside of Europe. London was considered to be the gateway to Europe by China, by India, by key markets in Africa. Now, if we're leaving the EU, how are we in London, in the UK, going to be seen as a gateway? We're not. So it means a lot of flirting, it means a lot of visits, it means a lot of, you know, politicians going and, you know, offering hands of friendship to places outside of the UK and outside of Europe.
Sue Bichao joining us live from London. Thank you. With that, we come to the end of this edition of The World Today on CGTN. I'm Zhong Shi. Goodbye from Beijing.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello and welcome to World Insight with Tian Wei, coming to you from Beijing on CGTN. Coming up on today's program, French voters head to the polls in a few days with the first round of election a toss-up among four standard barriers. And the rise of artificial intelligence, we look at what AI can do that has crossed the realm of science fiction into reality.
France goes to the polls in the first round of voting on April the 23rd. Frontrunners fired up independent centrist Emmanuel Macron, populist ultranationalist Marine Le Pen, rightist scandal-hit François Fillon, and left-leaning rising star Jean-Luc Mélenchon. A vote for Europe's future, open and united, or closed and divided. Liberty, equality, and fraternity, what they mean in the French election. Left, right, or the middle? Where is France heading? Get up to speed. Catch CGTN's coverage.
And we begin our program in France, where the race for the presidency has entered its final week. The election will begin on Sunday, taking place across 2 rounds. Given the large number of undecided voters in this year's race, any one of the current 4 frontrunners could make it through to the second round. For months, analysts have likened the upcoming French election to Europe's Stalingrad, well, a key turning point that will determine the future of both the country and the whole continent as well. How much will France and Europe change after this election? Before our discussion, first this.
The most unpredictable election. French voters have never been so confused about the vote in the upcoming presidential election.
It's a total mess right now. I have no clue who I will vote for on Sunday. I feel very helpless.
This is nothing but politics. There are some candidates who I dislike, and there are a few policies that I'm against.
I have to say this is the most uncertain presidential election I have seen in my 30-year career as a poll analyst. We have no idea who will make it to the second round and who will be the president of France.
The latest opinion polling for the first round of voting shows centrist candidate Emmanuel Macron in a close race with National Front leader Marine Le Pen, with center-right candidate François Fillon and the far-left's Jean-Luc Mélenchon following closely behind. 2017 is witnessing general elections in quite a few European countries, and many of them are facing challenging security situations. On April 11th, a bus-carrying German soccer team, Borussia Dortmund, was hit by 3 explosions. 1 player was injured. On April 7th, 4 people died and 15 were injured when a hijacked truck was driven into a department store in central Stockholm. On March 22nd, a 52-year-old man rammed a high-speed car into the side railings of the Westminster Bridge before stabbing a police officer to death. 4 people died and 40 others were injured. On Thursday, a gunman attack in Paris killed 1 policeman, the attacker, and wounded 2 others. Many believe it will add more uncertainty to Sunday's first-round vote of the French presidential election.
For more on the French election, we are joined in our Beijing studio here in Beijing, Cui Hongjian, Director of the Department for European Studies at the China Institute of International Studies. Welcome back, sir. In Paris, we are joined by Ms. Hélène Conway-Mouret, who is a member of the French Senate. And also in Nantes, in France, we have Yves Bascoul, who is the Director of Migration and Mobility Policies at the European Policy Center. Welcome to the 3 of you. In fact, I should say, what a great reunion again. Remember last time we talked about the French election only a few days from now, but things have changed. So what is your latest assessment about who will be that one seems to be winning a bigger hand? Ms. Conway-Mouret.
Well, I'm not too sure that we have moved on so far. I think we still need to be a fortune teller to know who will actually come out next Sunday ahead. We have 4 contenders, and we can have at the moment either a combination of 2 coming out. The polls are, as we know, not reliable or 100%. We know that they were wrong for the Brexit and for the election of Mr. Trump. And they have 4 candidates within 1 or 2%. And given that the error margin can be of 2%, anything can happen. So I'm afraid that we're still in the same position as we were in our last discussions, as far as I'm concerned anyway.
Mr. Bascoul, there has been complaints coming from the Macron campaign suggesting there has been fake news against him, and we saw him over the past few days going to the press trying to explain his links with Wall Street, with the financial sector. Much impact this will have on his performance, for example, during the first round of voting?
Well, he has already tried to dismiss all this myth and has said that some fake news will be coming out and will pop up in the course of this last week. So we have seen that some newspapers have also demonstrated that some fake news are now ongoing, and this is the role of his team to say that this is not true, and he has started to do so.
Is that going to be a big headache for him, Ms. Conway-Mouret? May I go back to you for Mr. Macron in the final stage leading to the first round?
Well, it's the last few days are just so important for the candidates. We know that a lot of people have not decided, and that a lot of them will actually decide when they're putting their vote into the box. It will be a kind of last-minute choice. So anything that is happening this week is absolutely crucial for all the candidates. And indeed, if there are fake news, they need to be opposed by the candidates. And also, they need to push forward what they believe will be convincing the electorate.
We all understand, Mr. Bascou, this is the first round usually in French election is what they call the protest vote, meaning people just want to have their air out. They want to show their attitude and toward the politicians and what is going on wrong in their country. Do you think this one, Mr. Bascou, will once again be a very strong protest vote?
Well, I think that we have to take into consideration that this is some sort of an unprecedented election where we have a series of new elements taking place. First, the fact that the president does not compete for his succession. This is a major point into the Fifth Republic. Second, the fact that the primaries have also taken a big part into the election, which has been now a long-standing election for more than 1 year. And last but not least, we have an election which is not a division between the socialists and the conservatives, which is more an opposition between the populists and the reformists. And here we have some sort of a balance in the two. So is it a protest? I am not entirely sure, but there is some sort of protest which is now taking the stand.
On the one hand, people are talking about the protest vote or not. On the other hand, Mr. Cui, people are also talking about whether it is so-called extreme right or extreme left. On many of the policies, actually, they're quite close to one another when it comes to these stances. So is it just an apparent drama that is going on before the election, or actually there are some real in-depth differences there that is likely to be unavoidable once the person being elected to come into power?
Yes, also especially if you have a perspective from the mainstream party, it looks like a far-right party already get its existence. But now how about the far left? Because now the question is, once Marine Le Pen entered into the second round, perhaps the support to the far left will transfer to far right, because as we understand it, especially for the average people, they will not take care of the small differences between far right and far left.
Well, really, Ms. Conway-Mouret, once again, it seems that Mr. Cui is trying to argue about a very much a protest vote for the first round, and people just want to express their opinions and be different for the first round. Ms. Conway-Mouret, is that likely to be the case given your experiences?
Well, as I say, it's difficult to say because in 2002 there was a protest vote, and we know that Madame Le Pen's father came to the second round, and it was an absolute shock to the country to feel that the extreme right to actually qualify. Now, unfortunately, everybody kind of agrees that she's going to be in the second round, and there is almost an anticipation that she will be there because all the other candidates, according to the polls, will actually beat her. So there is a kind of a race among the other candidates to be against her, to be assured of a victory. And I think this is very sad, because I think the image of France is really badly damaged by the fact that the extreme right can actually qualify in a country such as France with what it is defending and promoting. That is racism. It's a nationalist party that is promoting the closure of borders, which is anti-immigration, anti-refugees, which has an economic program which goes against anything that is actually needed for France today. And indeed, 25 Nobel Prizes have actually published a tribune today to explain how badly the program of Madame Le Pen will actually damage the French economy. So Sorry.
But you know, Ms. Conway, people might say, well, you're just one of those elites. You don't see the voices, so-called, of the silent majority, as they argue during the U.S. presidential election. Ms. Conway Mouhet, briefly respond.
No, I am not. No, I am not. I am not part of the elite. I have been elected to represent the people who believe in me and for whom I am a voice. And it's not my personal opinion. It's what I defend, which is also the expression of what the people who have elected me to stand in the Senate believe in. If they don't believe in what I promote and what I share with them, they will elect somebody else. So I'm not part of an elite
This is the
at all.
issue. This is the issue, isn't it? I mean, Mr. Bazgou, that there has been quite a division within your country, France, about what to do about France's future, whether it's more related to the European Union, and also whether it's as open or even more than before to people from outside the country. Is that going to be, Mr. Bazgou, at this point when you see it, the real defining issue in this election?
To a certain extent, yes, because I think that the main defining issue is the opposition we are having today between the populists, those who want to withdraw from globalization or want to reform it, but in a very strong manner, and the reformists, i.e. those who want to stay in the globalization phenomenon, and that those who understand that we can change the things, but within the mechanism. And here there is a clear opposition. Now, going back to what has been said before, it is absolutely true that there is a big gap between the far right and the far left on the question of immigration. One, far right is fundamentally opposed to any kind of migration, and far left is fundamentally open to migration. But on Europe, I think that there is a clear difference. Far-right parties are what we can say Europhobic. They don't like Europe and they don't want to remain into the European Union. Far-left has a different stand on this. They do not like the European Union as it is today and they want to change it. And if they are not able to change it, then they are going to raise the issue as to whether we stay in or do we pull out. And there is a clear distinction here.
That's right. But you see these days, there has been so much going on inside the European politics. Netherlands just had its election, not really going to the far right, unlike many of the media reports earlier suggested. And then there's also the early election of the UK right after the French election because of its agenda of Brexit. So between all of this, and of course later the Germany election, between all of these, how would that in a way impact on the French voters when they cast their vote in the polls? Ms. Conway Mouhet.
Well, I actually, it's an excellent question that you're asking, because I regret personally that international affairs and European affairs are not part of the debate at all. It's a very Franco-French debate as to what is being proposed for the French people, you know, on social issues.
Why not, do you think, Ms. Conway Mouhet? Why not? Why not? I mean, why not do you think the European topics is not being included in the overall debate? People are just not interested, or you know, candidates don't want to get into trouble.
Well, first of all, I suppose the candidates want to prove what they can bring to people's daily life and how they're going to bring changes to, you know, what people actually want out of that. But there is no space left for a debate on European issues and international issues. And it's as if France is totally isolated in the world, which it is not. Whatever is happening in Syria today, or the tensions between the US and North Korea, for instance, I mean, this is part also of what we should be concerned about with France's diplomatic, you know, influence and so on. And yet it is not being touched upon, maybe because people feel that it's far-fetched from their daily concerns, but also I think it's the duty of politicians to actually bring this global vision and express it as to what a French president will actually stand for in a world today that has a lot of political tensions, that has a lot of wars, and where France also plays a role. I mean, this is not just somebody who is maintaining or looking after a company, you know?
Yeah, that's right. It's true. Mr. Cui, what do you think among all of these elections? All of these elections has agenda about break away from the European Union or not. Netherlands coming up with the UK. Will that have an impact, do you think, on the French voters?
Yes, I think that it's understandable. I mean, for French people, for other European people, they will focus on some internal or domestic affairs during the election campaign. But now the question is, we are living in a globalized and high and mutual, interdependency world. So we need to take care of this spillover effect of this, all of this political event. Even for this moment, I mean, for this French election. I mean, especially from a Chinese perspective, or even from other European perspective, we can find out, yes, why we take so much, I mean, attention on it is because no matter which kind of domestic policy will be taken by the new president, certainly it will give a very, very direct impact on the firstly European Union and the European integration and other partners,
of course,
China.
But also at the time when we are going to the polls, I mean the voters, will the other elections in the Netherlands earlier and the coming up early election likely to take place in the UK because it still needs a parliamentary approval? So will these decisions have much impact on the French voters? What do you think, very briefly?
Yes, I think that firstly it will give a very, very clear message to these voters in France, especially from the Netherlands election, or perhaps after the election in France, and especially for the far right when our party in Germany, they will try to interpret some messages from this result of election. So that's the reason why, because we should not forget the situation, the European integration, which means the inter-influence between different countries.
What about that spillover effect that Mr. Bascou, Mr. Cui talked about, that the earlier elections in the Netherlands and also early election likely in the UK, will that have much impact on French voters' mentality?
I'm not that sure because, as it has been said just before, the campaign has been overly a French campaign with very little attention on Europe and very little attention on foreign policy. But there are two ways of seeing the French campaign right now. The first one is to say, well, after Brexit and Trump, now France is going to be the next one on the list to have a far right or a populist leader being elected. That's the first face of the coin. The other face is that it may also be the case that after Austria, the Netherlands, France will also show that extreme right parties will not be able to go to the final elections. So we have two ways of seeing this. This being said, I am not entirely sure that what is happening or what has happened in the UK or in the US may have a tremendous impact on the way French people are going to vote next Sunday and how they are going to behave into the voting booth.
And finally, before we go, I want to have a final words from every one of your three. Where do you think people are going in terms of making their decisions? Which direction do you think France, as a result, is going? Ms. Ganwei Muhe, once again, a fortune-telling question. You have 30 seconds only.
Well, I hope that they will vote against the extreme right. As I said, this is going to be detrimental for our country, but also have very negative impact on Europe and the rest of Europe.
Okay.
I'm a member of the Socialist Party, and therefore I don't agree and I don't approve with what Monsieur Fillon is presenting. I believe that this is going to be a very brutal program on social issues and will bring instability in France. So I just hope that they will be wise and make the right choice.
Make the right choice, Mr. Cui. What's the right choice?
Yes, it looks like for the first round of the election, French people will try to have an emotional express. But maybe for the second round, I hope that hopefully there will be a rational decision, because anyway, no matter who will be the next president, right. I mean, this election would be regarded a very, very big revolutionary change in the politics of France.
And the second round, of course, is on early May. And finally, but last but certainly not least, Mr. Bascou, final words.
Well, I do not have any crystal ball, which I wish to have. We are going to see next Sunday what is going to happen. I sincerely hope that the results of the first round will show that French voters do think that France is an ongoing country and that France is a country living in its world, i.e. in Europe and in the world. That's my hope, but we are going to see it on Sunday night.
Yves Bascou, Linda Ganvey-Mouret, and Cui Hongjian, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us. All the best. Thank you. And you're watching World Insight with Tian Wei. Still to come on our program. Machines smarter than humans. How advances in artificial intelligence have changed the way we think and work with computers. Right after this.
There was a time when many Chinese people thought that foreigners who worked in China are all English teachers. This was because back in the 90s, or even earlier, foreigners who were allowed to work in China were all experts in their fields, and people didn't see them often. As the globalization goes on, foreigners are doing all kinds of jobs in China, even being an internet sensation. On this week's crossover, we talk about these foreign expats' life in China. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. You're still watching World Insight with Tian Wei, coming to you Monday to Friday on CGTN. We now turn to one area at the cutting edge of scientific development, artificial intelligence, or AI. It's advancing rapidly in the realm of games as we are seeing robots winning over top human competitors. And more frequently, we are seeing AI that can do tasks previously exclusive to humans only, such as writing stories, creating movies, composing music, and even conducting behavioral analysis. So how close is the world to having artificial intelligence sophisticated enough to take over jobs requiring human creativity? Are humans ready for that?
In a popular television contest, a human and a robot were trying to recognize a woman using only a picture taken when she was a child. And eventually, the robot beat the human. And that is artificial intelligence.
Artificial intelligence has 4 functions: to enable machines to think and make decisions, to see, to listen, and to walk and fly.
AI has developed greatly in the past year. Google's AI program, AlphaGo, defeated top Go player Lee Sedol twice in a 5-game contest. That battle is being seen as a major landmark for what scientists and engineers have achieved in the field of AI. This year, an AI program has beaten a team of 6 poker players at a series of exhibition matches in China. And in January, an earlier version of the program beat 4 of the world's best poker pros. Making machines smart and letting them help humankind is an old idea. But a broad set of important technologies are emerging in which big data, cloud storage, and computers have equipped machines to do things previously unimaginable. Now, a Japanese electronics giant is developing software equipped with AI to enhance security screenings at large-scale venues, including shopping malls and stadiums. And this is expected to be rolled out for corporate customers within 2 years.
We need a lot of security guards and people to review security camera footage. We developed this AI software in hopes it would help them do just that.
Baidu is an industry leader that has been laying the groundwork in the AI sector for years. They say that 2017 could be a breakthrough year for the AI consumer market.
2017 will be a year of conversational computer. That people will be the year to communicate with machines using more natural language, using voice. And people in the future, basically kids will basically talk to computers saying, okay, can you turn on the light for me at home?
As tech giants race to develop AI technology, it's worth pondering what it means for our future. Nobody can fathom how large the industry will become, but the potential is there.
And for more on this, we are joined in the Beijing studio, Jay Huang, who is a founding partner of J-Stone Venture and also former managing director of Intel China. Welcome to our program, Mr. Huang. In Tokyo, we're joined by William Saito, who is a special advisor to the Japanese cabinet and also founder of Intercare, an international technology consulting and advisory firm. Welcome as well. In Washington, D.C., we are joined by Dr. Ernest McDuffie, a computer scientist and founder of Global McDuffie Group. Gentlemen, I want to start by asking you whether we should take pleasure in enjoying whether it is the poker match AI vis-a-vis human being or the Go match AI vis-a-vis human being. Mr. Saito.
I think that the poker match where AI has definitely beaten humans it took me by surprise, but it takes it to a whole new level because what this shows is that AI can actually now trick people and use the subtleties of poker, which really don't manifest itself in Go. So I am actually quite surprised that poker was defeated so quickly.
So trick ourselves, actually, it is the thing that you are concerned a little bit about and surprised by. Mr. McDuffie, what about you?
Yeah, I think the poker victory was certainly significant. AI has come a long way in the last 5 to 10 years for sure. I don't know if I would categorize it as tricking human beings. There's a certain strategy in poker that deals with bluffing and incomplete knowledge that certainly has fundamentals associated with it that can be learned and improved upon. So it's the software is proving to be very adaptable to that environment.
In other words, Mr. Duffy, did I understand you right that the poker, when it comes to AI, they still do not have so-called emotion in order to trick us, but rather a self-learning capability to the degree it can to trick us as a result of previous precedents? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. Emotion is actually a negative aspect for a poker player. You don't want to give away, you got a good hand and you show it in your face, you'll lose. But to not have a good hand and bluff is determined to be a really positive strategy, but you have to know when's the most advantageous time to do it. But it's not an emotional thing, it's a game strategy. Yeah.
Mr. Huang.
Yeah. I think the significance for this time's AI win is the poker game is so-called imperfect information scenario. People even say, and it is a metaphor for stock market, for example. And also the latest AI, and my understanding is developed by Carnegie Mellon University, the CMU. And they said that the algorithm is not specially designed for poker game. You have a wide application. So that means, and then this could be used for other imperfect information scenarios, for example, stock market. So that have a much wider application than just win a few poker games.
What's wrong with that? Well, Mr. Saito, I do want to ask that question. I mean, why don't we just, in the future, employ a few AI to do the stock market for us? We sit back at home, we can enjoy whatever we want to do at the time.
It tends to be quite scary until we get used to it. What's interesting about all of this is We think it goes away, but society accepts this when this gets integrated in subtle ways and is used in many, many ways that AI already exists. So I think I agree with you that there's really not much concern in the way of how this will benefit humans, and that we could also then apply our humanness to other new things and to different things. And these automated tasks especially, we can rely on AI to take care of some things. Now, stock market is a different scenario where if AI against AI, I don't know how that'll turn out, but I do agree that it does benefit.
That's likely to be a competition between labs and among universities. Mr. Huang, what about that scenario?
Right.
You sit back at home, okay, you lose in your poker game against the AIs, but it's okay, right? You just want to have a game. And on the other hand, you have all of them working for you, including at the stock market, aiming huge bucks. What is wrong with it?
So it could be, the impact could be like 50% of the people who cannot find a job. Their job has been replaced by AI. The other 50% of the people, and then with AI help them, their life may be much, much better. So depending how you look at that, some of the people may think they're really, really happy to see AI coming to help them. And then the other half population, or even bigger, found that they couldn't find a job. And then we can see the society
that by the potential benefits. The fear factor, I think, comes in from the almost, we could call it the science fiction scenario, where artificial intelligence becomes just barely equal to human intelligence, but then you amplify it with the fact that electronics are operating at about 1 million times faster than the biochemistry of the normal human brain. So
I know that's what you're thinking.
You could have super intelligence.
I know that's what you're thinking, Dr. McDuffie. You're thinking about science fiction. In reality, though, what is likely to happen in the very near future? Let's have Mr. Saito to explain for us. Is it going to be like the science fiction that the AI is likely to have these self-learning capabilities, even about emotions, and eventually be able to go beyond what the human being will be able to do? Or actually, it is going to be just a companion and a tool of the human society? Which direction do you think, Mr. Saito, we're going right now?
No, I think that's a really good question. But if you think about it, inevitably, the way that human brains and human minds think, science has established that it's not magic, that these are chemical reactions that we do, and that ultimately I do believe that computing will outtake humans and the way they think. Now, how society copes with that, there are other technologies that are already outdo humans anyway. Cars move faster than human beings, for example. So there are things that already do things better. Now, the human brain and how we then compete with this in both the short term and the long term, there are going to be issues. One of the things that I bring up, like the other speakers have mentioned, is that grade school kids today, by the time they are in the job market, 65% of the jobs won't exist. And so it's how to train these kids to be ready for the new jobs, but that this inevitable, we know in this particular case that it's going to happen. So unlike other innovations in the past, we can actually predict the future and actually get ahead of it. And so that's, I think, one of the unique both threats and opportunities that this technology provides.
Mr. Huang, AI, in a way, fascinates us because it's likely to transform a lot of different areas of human society, particularly about the jobs and also about the professional places. Mr. Huang, where do you think this is going? If AI is not working on the so-called emotion self-learning part, only on the skills and the precedence so-called self-learning part, how big a challenge is it? Can humans have a say about which direction it is going, given the division we have in our society today?
I don't worry about, say, as a whole, say, AI is going to replace a human being. And as some science fiction movie has been tell us, I don't worry about that. But I do think about, as individual, every one of us should be thinking about how well we prepare to embrace the inevitable error with AI. For example, if you're a taxi driver today, and then maybe in 5 years your job will not be there, and you need to worry about and figure out how are we going to cope with that. And then for the younger generation, for example, and it appears this machine learning has learned very, very fast.
I mean, AI has been there, you know, this slogan, you know, beyond what the human can do. 60 years, 60, gentlemen. And it only reached where it is today. Are we exaggerating the whole thing now again, Dr. McDuffie?
I think this time is ultimately different than before.
Did you say that also last time? Did you say that also last time, Dr. McDuffie?
No. Look, just for a little background, I mean, I've been in the field of artificial intelligence for the last 25 years at least.
Right.
And I saw the ups and downs and the dark winters and the goals not being reached. But a couple of things are fundamentally different today than they were then. Number one is the availability of compute power, the ability to crunch numbers at an unbelievable rate and the volume. The idea of big data. Most automatic learning systems are successful because of the amount of data available for them to train and learn on. This is first time in human history that these two things have come together with the algorithms and the advances in the theoretical approaches to really make that's why you're seeing these breakthroughs in games like Go and poker and other areas, is because of these the combination of these technologies. And I agree with the other speaker, it's not something to worry about. It's pretty much inevitable at this point, so you have to plan for it because it's there. I've heard reports saying that we have to think about a society where virtually every job that you can imagine now no longer exists, and you have to put some kind of basic living wage in place for the masses of population and free them just to do things that they want to do from a creative intellectual standpoint, because all the kind of for-pay jobs now are no longer available.
Well, probably we can still invite the three of you back even when AI is dominating our society. I think we still need to have people who would articulate what's happening rather than having AI sitting in the chair for us. But, you know, one of the things extremely important, that is sometimes things are going less than what people have been talking about. In other words, this time we also see enormous amount of bubble, as we have seen in the past 60 years at different stages of development of AI. Mr. Saito, how can we tell the truth from the false or from the fake?
Well, I think that what Dr. McDuffie was saying was correct. I would elaborate on that the internet is one of the big pivots that allow people to suck up all this information that we describe here. So that is definitely a big change. The other big change that I think, what I say to people is that AI is actually going to really take off here because of what sensors do today and fundamentally what that means. And specifically, for example, our cell phones today have an average of 14 sensors. Just a couple decades ago, that would have cost you $250,000. Now that these sensors are, very prolific and very cheap, we are now, for the first time in humankind, using data that has never been entered by human beings. Up to now, even the stuff on the internet, the human beings have tended to enter it. So now we have all this data that AI could further use. And so I think Bill Gates put it well, quoted that humans tend to overestimate the short term and medium term, but we tend to underestimate the long term. And so the long term impacts are, I think, the ones that really are worrying us. But I think that in the end, it's inevitable. And in this case, it's predictive. So I think I look forward to the future.
Well, me too, but people talking about competition, for example, Mr. Huang. So Mr. Huang, what about that competition? Particularly which country or which industry is likely to really get ahead, keeping up with the trend, which are likely to be left over? Or can we give some characteristics of these two very different groups?
I think in terms of competition in this AI field, I think the United States definitely is a leading country. China has been doing quite well in lots of areas in this artificial intelligence and side of it. If you look at this one look at like a pyramid, for example, on the top of it is the algorithm. The next layer is the chip, and then some like servers and applications at the bottom. China has been historically doing very well in the application side of it. I expect to see and some good progress being made in that area.
All right.
I know some of professors are doing really good, and Chinese professors on the algorithm side. I think China is another leading country in terms of AI.
Dr. McDuffie, final words from you. What is your thought?
Yeah, I agree. The academic world is going to be churning out advances in this field very rapidly, and it's going to be up to entrepreneurs and business people to take advantage and to cross the valley, the so-called valley of death, from pure research to application to take advantage of all these advances. The prices are coming down dramatically. They said the software program that the Cold Poker Master program was bought for under $20,000.
Right.
And in 4 or 5 years from now, that software could be available on your smartphone. So the trajectory is clearly there, and the economics of it means that it's going to be a major impact on virtually every field of endeavor.
Okay, William Saito, Ernest McDuffie, Jay Huang, thank you so much. And that is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, you can visit our website. Just type World Insight with Tianwei CGTN into your search engine, or check out our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. From me, Tianwei, and everyone on the World Insight with Tianwei team, thanks for watching. And tune in again next time for more insights from across China and around the world. The weekend is up. Have a great one, everyone.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
You're watching The Link on CGTN. On today's show.
Certain presidential candidates made the choice of outrage and division.
French investigators find a note defending Islamic State next to the body of the gunman who opened fire on police on Thursday. And security is tightened as the country prepares to head to the polls for a new president. Journey to space from 3 countries. Is it the beginning of a 21st century space race as spacecraft from China, Russia and the US all blast off in the very same week? And in Africa, several countries are already battling drought and severe food shortages. And now there's a new threat as Nigeria, Sudan and Somalia tackle an outbreak of meningitis. Thanks for joining us on The Link. News and analysis coming to you live from 3 continents. I'm Jiao Yang in Beijing. It's 11 p.m.
I'm Jessica Stone in Washington, where it is now 11 a.m. Eastern Time.
And I'm Penina Karibe in Nairobi, where it's 6 p.m.
Investigators in France say they have found a note defending Islamic State next to the body of the gunman who opened fire on police officers on Thursday. 1 officer was killed and 2 others wounded in the incident. The attacker, named by the media as 39-year-old French national Karim Choufi, was shot and killed by police. 3 members of Choufi's family have since been arrested. The attack happened just days before France's presidential election on Sunday. Now, for the latest, we have Angela Charlton with us live on the show. She's a reporter from the Associated Press, joining us now from Paris. Hi there, Angela. Thank you for joining us. Now, we heard earlier that the Prime Minister of France accused presidential candidate Marine Le Pen of trying to use this incident to score political points. Now, could you tell us more about that, and what else have authorities had to say about this?
Marine Le Pen has stirred up fears of Islamic extremism throughout this presidential campaign. And the Prime Minister, like some other mainstream politicians, is very concerned about this. They're concerned that that could drive more voters toward Marine Le Pen in Sunday's election. Cazeneuve and the President Francois Hollande have called for unity, and they're calling for the exact opposite. They want people to come out and vote for more conciliatory candidates and not go to the extremes.
Certain presidential candidates made the choice of outrage and division. Marine Le Pen is asking for the immediate restoration of our national borders. She appears to ignore that it is this government that re-established control of the borders. François Fillon recommends the creation of 10,000 police officer posts. How to believe this? A candidate who, when he was Prime Minister, got rid of 13,000 security forces, when during this 5-year term 9,000 were created, with a large number in the intelligence services.
Now, Angela, the presidential election, that's being held on Sunday. So, post this attack, what kind of security improvements have we seen in Paris?
Well, France is already under a state of emergency that's been in place since 2015. There have been several attacks here over the last few years, and already for this presidential election, there are 50,000 security forces who will be out in force around the country, protecting prominent sites, tourist sites, but also the 70,000 voting stations. So President Francois Hollande had a special security meeting this morning where he took stock of the plans that they have. They made some adjustments, and they came out afterwards and vowed that they've mobilized everyone they possibly could to protect this election.
All right, Angela Charlton, thank you so much, with the Associated Press joining us from Paris. Now stay with us for more analysis on that attack when we come back.
CGTN shows you more, providing a fresh global voice you can trust.
And a different look at the world you won't find anywhere else.
We offer unparalleled coverage of Asia, Africa, and Latin America.
We present diverse perspectives on news and newsmakers from around the world.
We want to engage our viewers with stories that represent the complete picture.
We want to share with you ideas that matter to us all. The stories, the people, the issues.
A new and balanced perspective.
CGTN. See the difference.
Welcome back. We have more analysis for you now on that attack on Thursday in Paris, and we're joined by Professor Joab Toker from the American Graduate School there. Professor Toker, thank you so much for coming on our show. Now, there have been other recent attacks on security personnel in France, one on the Louvre Museum and another at Orly Airport. Are we seeing a pattern here? And also, why Paris? So many attacks in Paris in the last few years.
Right, you are. Unfortunately, Paris seems to be a popular target, if that's the right term, and it is not the right term. But there are two major reasons for that. The first one is the nature and the quantity of security elements which are present on French territory. Let me remind you that France has the largest Muslim minority in Europe, and it has the largest, numerically, the largest number of radical Islamist militants. Although many of them are under surveillance and there is no precedent to the security effort the French authorities are exercising over the last 2 years and more, these are the results. The second major reason is more political. There are many issues at stake in terms of the rage of radical Islam milieu against France, because France is active in the war against ISIL in Syria and in Iraq, because French troops are present in Africa, in Central and West Africa, fighting terrorist group affiliated with radical Islam. And France has legislated some, and at home, some laws which irritate particularly radical Islamists. You regroup all these together and you have the unfortunate answer as to why is France so often targeted.
And now, could this attack influence the presidential election? We've heard that from the Prime Minister, a warning not to use this as a divisive to score political points. But could this still provide a platform for candidates to sway voters?
Well, honestly, everyone should be extremely cautious regarding any provisions and any anticipation as to the result, with or without the terrorist recent attacks. But I won't be that cautious, and I'll let you know what my intimate conviction is, that no, that the answer is no. Not because these issues are not important. They are extremely important. They're probably number 1 or 2 on the hierarchy of issues on the minds of the French electorate, but just because of the fact that the terror attack yesterday over the Champs-Élysées next door here was, if I may say so, a small terrorist attack with just 1 victim and 2 persons wounded. Don't forget that France has gone through the traumatic experience of 180 people dead over 1 evening about a year and a half ago, and some other massive killings in Nice and in Paris. So French public opinion has been accustomed to it, if there is a way of being accustomed to it. And this is why I do not think that that would have a crucial impact on the results.
Thank you very much, Professor Toker, for your insight there. Professor Joab Toker from the American Graduate School in Paris. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has attended the Foreign Ministers' meeting of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in the capital of Kazakhstan, Astana. Wang said the organization has maintained steady growth since it was founded. After accepting India and Pakistan as member states, the SCO will become the most populous regional international organization, covering the widest territory. Wang also met his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov on Friday. He said that China and Russia have maintained close contact on regional and international issues, and that the two countries will continue to deepen cooperation, paving the way for next month's Belt and Road Forum, which takes place in Beijing. The evacuation of civilians and pro-government fighters from 4 besieged towns in Syria resumed on Friday after a 48-hour suspension. The 2-day hold came after rebels demanded the government free more than 700 prisoners. Last week, a bomb struck a bus convoy carrying evacuees from 2 Shiite villages, killing at least 126 people. President Bashar al-Assad was quoted on Friday as saying that the group, formerly known as the Nusra Front, was responsible for that attack. The U.S. Defense Secretary, meanwhile, has issued a warning to the Syrian government. We go to Washington, D.C., where my co-host Jessica has the details on that and other news across the Americas. Jessica.
Thanks, Zhao Yang. The U.S. Secretary of Defense, as you mentioned, sending a warning to Syria. Do not use chemical weapons again. Jim Mattis saying he believes Damascus still has a stockpile of munitions despite agreeing to give them up in 2013. He made those comments in Israel during a joint news conference with the Israeli defense minister.
There can be no doubt in the international community's mind that Syria has retained chemical weapons in violation of its agreement and its statement that it had removed them all. There's no longer any doubt.
The Israel defense minister said he agreed with Mattis's assessment. Their strong statements follow a deadly chemical attack earlier this month on an opposition-held town in northern Syria. Syria denies responsibility. U.S. Vice President Mike Pence is in Sydney, the latest stop on his 10-day Asia tour. He's scheduled to meet with Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull and several other Australian leaders. Pence will also have some downtime. He and his family are planning to tour several landmarks. The visit follows Pence's stops in the Republic of Korea, Japan, and Indonesia. While Pence is abroad, U.S. President Donald Trump is here in Washington on Twitter. Today's topic, China and the DPRK, or the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Trump writing this, quote, China is very much the economic lifeline to North Korea. So while nothing is easy, if they want to solve the North Korean problem, they will. Those words come, though, at a tense time between the DPRK and the Republic of Korea over Pyongyang's nuclear ambitions. Trump called China's neighbor a menace Thursday during a news conference with Italy's prime minister. Trump recently said he realizes the relationship between Beijing and Pyongyang is, quote, not so easy following his summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Zhao Yang?
Thanks very much, Jessica. Now, more collaboration between China and South Africa is on the way. That and more from Africa Now with my co-host Penina in Nairobi.
Thank you very much. Let's take a look at news making headlines across the continent. South Africa is hosting a people-to-people exchange mechanism with China next week. The event aims to deepen a diplomatic relationship that has spanned 17 years. The two countries pledged to establish the high-level meeting when President Xi Jinping visited South Africa in December 2015. South Africa says the meeting will focus on multiracialism, the spirit of internationalism, mutual friendship, and shared ideas and advancement.
Our objective is to create spaces and opportunities to contribute in the knowledge and common understanding between South Africa and China through enhancing contact. This mechanism serves further to identify opportunities for cooperation based on mutual interest and benefit.
U.S. President Donald Trump says he sees no role for the United States in Libya apart from defeating ISIL. The militants are currently taking advantage of Libya's instability. Trump has reiterated his administration's stance on Libya, stating U.S. efforts fighting ISIL have been effective so far. His comments follow reports earlier this week that a member of his team had suggested dividing Libya into 3 states. Egypt's International Festival for Drums and Traditional Arts has kicked off in Cairo. 23 countries are participating in the event. Drums are a key musical instrument in many cultures. Cairo hopes to show that an instrument that used to be used to declare war can be used to bring countries together. We'll be keeping an eye on these stories for you. Back to you, Zhao Yang.
Thanks very much, Penina. Stay with us on The Link. Turning now to China's latest step towards the goal of completing its very own space station. After a successful launch on Thursday evening, China's first cargo spacecraft, Tianzhou-1, is now in orbit. It will carry out its first docking with the country's Tiangong-2 Space Lab on Saturday. The unmanned Tianzhou-1 is set for 3 docking attempts with the Space Lab, which was sent into orbit last September. It will fuel the lab at each docking attempt to test resupply technology. Multiple experiments will also be carried out during its additional 3-month stay in space after the docking process. Hours before China's cargo spaceship liftoff, Russia launched a manned spacecraft from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. The Soyuz MS-04 spacecraft took Russian cosmonaut Fyodor Yurchikhin and U.S. flight engineer Jack Fisher to the International Space Station for a 4-month scientific mission. The astronauts docked with the space station and joined 3 other crew members there. And that's not all. On Tuesday, the United States sent its Cygnus module into space, carrying supplies to the space station. So that's 3 successful space ventures within just a couple of days. Well, it looks like the race to space is certainly getting heated and also crowded. We go to Jessica in our Washington, D.C. studio for more on this.
That's right. Well, more and more, the U.S. space agency NASA is actually relying on private companies like Orbital ATK to reach the stars.
Go for main engine start. 1, 0, and liftoff of the Atlas V rocket.
Orbital ATK's Cygnus spacecraft will reach the International Space Station within the next day or so. It'll be delivering a cargo of groceries, science experiments, and other supplies. And for the first time, this launch gave us a new look at the process, designed for the social media age. NASA offering a 360-degree video feed from the launch pad in Cape Canaveral, Florida. Orbital ATK and SpaceX have been handling these payload deliveries for several years now. They're filling a black hole, so to speak, of U.S. manned spaceflight since NASA retired its shuttle program. Our very own CGTN's Jim Spellman takes a look at the history of American space exploration.
For years, the space race had 2 clear leaders, the Soviet Union and the United States. In 1957, the Soviets were first in space with the Sputnik satellite. And in 1969, the Americans put a man on the moon.
It's 1 small step for man, 1 giant leap for mankind.
The U.S. has long held a leadership position in space exploration, but now the U.S. space agency NASA faces an uncertain future.
3, 2, 1.
Since the space shuttle's final launch in 2011, the U.S. government has no means to put humans into space. NASA currently relies on Russia to ferry astronauts to the International Space Station. The U.S. space program has shifted towards private firms like Orbital ATK and SpaceX, hoping that soon these companies will create spacecraft capable of manned spaceflight. Last month, U.S. President Donald Trump signed into law increased funding for NASA.
It's been a long time since a bill like this has been signed, reaffirming our national commitment to the core mission of NASA: human space exploration, space science, and technology.
While NASA continues to collaborate on the International Space Station and research projects like next year's Webb Space Telescope continue, it's not clear what the next big mission will be for NASA and the U.S. space program. Trump has spoken of reviving the long-dreamed-of mission to Mars, but there are no concrete plans. As countries like China take on a bigger role, it's possible the United States may never again be the clear leader in space. Jim Spellman, CGTN, Washington.
Now we're going to bring in Leroy Chow. He joins us live from Houston, Texas via Skype to talk more about the state of space exploration. And he should know he's a former American astronaut as well as International Space Station commander. Thanks for being with us, Leroy.
Oh, my pleasure. Good to be back.
So as you know, China really has a very ambitious plan for its role in space, but at the same time, they are progressing in that direction. The U.S. is actually outsourcing to private companies a lot of its technology for space. Where is that leading in terms of where the industry as a whole is going?
Well, it's actually an interesting evolution, and I think it's the right path for the U.S. space program to take. Several years ago, NASA was directed to begin working with some of these commercial companies, and right now we have 2 suppliers sending cargo to the ISS, SpaceX with their Dragon spacecraft and Falcon rockets, and we have Orbital ATK, which just successfully launched one of their missions. And also, SpaceX and the Boeing company are on contract to begin commercial flights of crewed spacecraft taking U.S. astronauts and other astronauts to and from the ISS. So it's an interesting evolution, and I think it sets up the very nice possibility of government and commercial collaboration even further, even to exploration.
And in terms of the need for that exploration, does the fact that more countries and companies are making space technology in general, does that mean we're going to see more improvements in terms of cost and delivery?
Well, that's the hope. If we can, use commercial government partnerships, as we're doing for cargo and will for crew pretty soon to ISS, then the idea is that we will be able to save some money doing that. I also believe we should be expanding the international cooperation. The ISS, the International Space Station, one of the biggest things that came out of that was this international framework of all these different countries coming together and working together. And I think that should be expanded and extended to exploration beyond low Earth orbit.
If you heard the piece that preceded our segment with you, you probably heard that, as China is going towards a lot of things, Russia helping the U.S. get on the space station. You talk about international cooperation. Is China setting itself up to take the lead in terms of international cooperation in this area?
Well, China certainly is the up-and-comer. China is moving forward at a very measured and good pace. As you mentioned, they're going to be launching the first element of the space station, the Chinese space station, next year. They'll have it operational by 2020 and fully completed by 2022. Now, the International Space Station is currently slated for a completion of operations in 2024, and so that sets up the very real possibility of kind of a baton passing between the ISS and the Chinese space station. China has been very open about wanting international cooperation, about wanting partners to not only do research aboard the Chinese station, but also flying international astronauts to the station. And so there's a proposal, of course, to extend ISS to 2028, but it's a very valid point that the U.S., while it can be argued that we're slowly making some progress, and I think we've definitely slowed down, and the up-and-comer is China. And I think it makes sense for us to partner together rather than, people calling for some kind of a renewed space race. I don't see that happening.
And we'll leave it there. Leroy Chiao, thanks for joining us from Houston. We appreciate your knowledge and expertise. Well, beyond the space stations, both China and the United States hoping to launch manned missions to Mars by 2030. Zhao Yang?
Thanks very much, Jessica. We're returning from space now. We go next to Africa, where several countries are battling drought, severe food shortages and outbreaks of disease. On top of everything, there's also been an outbreak of meningitis in Nigeria. We go back to Panina in our Nairobi studio for more details. Panina.
Yes, Zhao Yang. Countries including South Sudan, Somalia, Ethiopia, Nigeria, Zimbabwe, and even parts of Kenya are dealing with a range of problems. Apart from challenges like violence and ongoing unrest, some African nations are dealing with everything from drought and famine to cholera and acute diarrhea. Now, in Somalia, the United Nations has warned that the cholera outbreak is ravaging the country. More than 25,000 people are battling the disease, and authorities fear the numbers could double in the coming months. Aid agencies say the extreme drought has forced families to drink unclean, contaminated water. Meanwhile, in neighboring Ethiopia, the government is appealing for more assistance as the need for food supplies intensifies. The World Food Programme and the UN have called for better global responses to appeals for aid. Despite urgent requests and warnings of the severity of the situation, there is still a massive funding shortfall. Tens of millions of people in Ethiopia, Nigeria, South Sudan and Somalia are in desperate need of food assistance. For more on this, let's cross to Lagos now, where public health physician Dr. Olawashun Jegede is standing by. Dr. Jegede, we've heard a lot about the geopolitical challenges some parts of Africa are facing. How much of an impact do drought or famine-like conditions have on the spread of diseases, and what diseases are we talking about here?
Well, drought in this part of Africa, is a lot of burden on the people, because when there's drought, there's scarcity of water, and also there's scarcity of food. Water and food are the basic objects that are very essential to life. Without water, the human cannot survive. Without food, there could not be good, adequate food and nutrition, so the person could become immunocompromised because the immunity can drop due to lack of food and good nutrition. So in this part of Africa that we have drought, the lack of water would actually drive people to seek for water from sources that are very unclean and that are contaminated. So such sausage could have disease entities in them, and topping the list of these diseases are the cholera disease, which we know as the Vibrio cholera disease, caused by an organism we call the Vibrio cholera. Usually when they have it, it can cause acute diarrhea, acute form of diarrhea. And apart from cholera itself, there could be other disease entities. For example, Salmonella, which is known to cause typhoid in this region of Africa, and as well as other diarrhea diseases called the E. coli diarrhea disease in this part of Africa.
Right, let's talk about cholera, because it's been quite common in all of these countries that we've talked about. How is it transmitted, and what precautions can people in affected areas take to prevent the spread?
Yeah, well, in this part of Africa, well, I will actually say that individual effort will be more at work here in preventing the spread of the disease. Currently, the best that the government of these regions could do now is to spread the awareness, which is one of the components of preventive health and what we call primary prevention. What the government could do for now is to spread the awareness and make people to actually get educated about the illness. The government still has to do a lot, a lot in terms of providing adequate water for the people and portable water for the people. But on the part of the people, I think personal hygiene still goes a long way. Proper sewage disposal system has to be properly practiced and implemented, and the source of water has to be properly treated. What we always say to people at primary healthcare level in their respective homes is to ensure that if they are not sure of the source of water they are getting, they should boil the water. Yes, they should boil the water adequately before drinking or before using it for anything that has to go inside. We know that the disease is spread through the fecal-oral routes. Also, about the sewage disposal system, people has to be more forthcoming in terms of their personal hygiene when they dispose their sewage. So it is very, very important. At this level, I think personal hygiene will go a long way at curbing the spread of the disease. Then the government still has to do a lot more about curbing the spread of the disease. A lot has to be done by the government. Provision of adequate water, generally improving the socioeconomic status of the people involved will also help at curbing the disease. Then provision of adequate health facilities that will recognize early diagnosis of the disease and also promptly treat people and prevent others that have been infected.
Doctor, if I may chip in there, I'm afraid we are short on time, but thank you very much for those insights. Dr. Oluwaseun Jegede joining us live from Lagos. Well, there's also been an outbreak of meningitis in Nigeria. Authorities say it's not linked to the drought or famine-like conditions. However, it's certainly complicating the efforts of aid workers. We'll be keeping an eye on the situation. Back to you, Joya.
We do have to end our program here now for the link. Thank you so much, Penina. I'm Delia. On behalf of all of us on the team, thank you for watching.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Egypt unveils its latest in a series of new discoveries in a massive 3,000-year-old granite statue of Ramses II, one of the most powerful pharaohs of the Egyptian Empire. Literary enthusiasts in Beijing are in for a real treat as the British Library begins a major 2-month exhibition of its manuscripts at the National Library of China. We speak to the daughter of legendary Chinese playwright Cao Yu, who reveals how he convinced her to follow in his footsteps. And as International Labor Day approaches, we meet a remarkable 43-year-old woman who turned to weaving bamboo to support her family after being let go from her job. That and more coming up next. Hello, welcome to Culture Express on CGTN. I'm Julian Walken in Beijing. Thank you for joining us. We begin with some exciting news of an archaeological finding. Egypt has unveiled a massive granite statue of Ramses II, one of the most celebrated and powerful pharaohs of the Egyptian Empire, decades after it was first discovered, smashed into dozens of pieces. Ramses II led many military expeditions north and south into the Levant and modern-day Sudan, expanding the empire.
Standing 11 meters tall and weighing about 75 tons, the sculpture was unveiled at Luxor Temple on the banks of the River Nile, just hours after the unveiling of the 3,000-year-old tomb of a nobleman. They are the latest in a series of major discoveries of ancient relics that Egypt hopes will revive its tourism industry that has been rocked by years of political instability. Authorities in Egypt were understandably very excited by the discovery.
Tomb of Usirhat, most probably of the 18th dynasty, and we were surprised by the number of objects found inside. A lot of pottery, a lot of ushabti, more than 1,000, a lot of coffins, mummies, stele, statuette. So, and the work is going on. So I think that during the next days and weeks we'll find more objects. This tomb was already known from the outside, and it took a number, 157, but we have never been inside. I'm very proud because it's a work of the Egyptian mission on the employee of the ministry.
So the guy, he was a bit worried that his grandfather's mummies, coffins will be destroyed by the thieves of the tomb, or the tomb robbers. So he had to cut this part out of the tomb to be able to hide a couple of wooden coffins here. And in fact, when we did our excavations, we found more than 7 coffins just right in this area.
The tomb consists of an open court leading into a rectangular hall, a corridor, and inner chamber. When discovered in the late 1950s, the destroyed statue of Ramses II was in 57 pieces. But it wasn't until November of last year that the restoration process began. Egypt feels that after years of political and social unrest, the country is now a much more accommodating place for tourism.
What we are happy of that classical Egypt, Luxor, Aswan, night cruises, this type of tourists this type of travel started to be back to the normal figures that we used to have before even 2010. Even the number shown here in Luxor and in Aswan on the classical Egypt is much better than even than the Red Sea. Of course, this is the base of the travel to Egypt. This is the base for the tourists in Egypt. So we are very much happy that we are having this, and any add to the destination, it's considered a real asset to our area and to the entire country.
Liu Wenwen, CGTN.
Fascinating find close to home now, and another historical finding. A break-chambered tomb from the Song Dynasty was recently discovered at a construction site in Guanghan, Sichuan province. Whilst exploring it, archaeologists also happened upon a series of cultural relics which indicate that the owner was probably endowed with a high social status. Here's more.
The tomb, dating back to the Song Dynasty around the beginning of the second millennium, was discovered by workers in late March. The archaeologists unearthed dozens of cultural relics, such as colored clay figurines, clay chairs, clay drums, and a clay house. The most eye-catching items are these 2 clay warriors. Experts say the owner would have been very wealthy.
From the scale of the tomb and the quantity of these exquisite cultural relics, we can say that the owner belonged to a rich family. These items are a valuable resource for research into the economy and culture of the Song Dynasty.
After delicate excavation, the archaeologists are now making the relics more presentable.
We're cleaning the dirt on the surface of these items. It will take about a week to finish.
When they are ready, they will then be presented to the local Cultural Relics Administration. Li Xiong, CGTN.
And in southern Pakistan, a once glorious 800-year-old Jain temple in the Thar Parker Desert is in dire need of restoration. In a region void of any Jain followers, it's been abandoned for years, much of it damaged beyond repair, and the parts that can are too elaborate for ordinary scalpers.
As audible as a squeaking colony of bats, a lone devotee recites sacred Hindu texts. 25-year-old Asan Das, a resident of the adjoining Virava village in Necker Parker, comes to the temple every day. Like other locals, he doesn't follow the Jain religion, but he likes to pray in its inner sanctum nonetheless, and read the sacred Hindu texts, the Gita. He prays to the Hindu god Shiva, whose image commands the main alcove which once had statues of Jain gods. The temple has 24 small but empty rooms. The carvings and statues that once adorned them were pilfered long ago. Forgotten and abandoned, the temple has fallen into disrepair. The religious iconography on the ceiling of the inner dome has been eroded by the restive bats.
Bats live here because of the lack of electricity. There are way too many bats because of the darkness.
There are no Jain followers in the area, but a number of Hindus, like Das, sometimes come here to pray. But they end up doing more harm, as can be seen by the doodling and scribbling on the columns and walls. There has been a token effort at restoration, but it's been done in a haphazard way, compromising the beauty of the architecture and iconography. One of the oldest religions of the world, Jainism has similarities with Hinduism and Buddhism. It is about asceticism, or overcoming worldly desires. It also gives the universal message of non-violence.
In our desert of Thapaka, history is often blown away by the sand, but this temple continues to defy the desert to preserve its history. Even today, its existence, even if damaged, continues to attract people.
The elaborate carvings and artwork are still visible on the inner ceiling, as is the outer canopy. It is a testament to the skill and ability of those who constructed the temple. The provincial government of Sindh is undertaking efforts to preserve, restore and reconstruct historical sites. Syed Sardar Ali Shah, the Sindh Culture Minister, says work on the temples will begin soon. But he also highlighted the challenges of restoring such monuments of antiquity.
Unfortunately, there isn't any artist or sculptor in Pakistan who can make stone statues. Furthermore, there might be people in India who can work with black or white stone, but there's none in Pakistan. Here, you can get sculptures made of fiberglass or plaster of Paris or some other material, but not stone.
This mysterious ruined temple adds to the arid landscape of the Thar Parker Desert, but continuous neglect is reducing it to a shadow of its past glory. Rory Cohn, CGTN.
Coming up on Culture Express. Literary enthusiasts in Beijing are in for a real treat as the British Library begins a major 2-month exhibition of its manuscripts at the National Library of China. We speak to the daughter of the legendary Chinese playwright Cao Yu, who reveals how he convinced her to follow in his footsteps.
Congratulations on your new production, Born in China. Mainly 3 different stories. We have Golden Monkey, we have the Panda, Great Panda, and we have the Snow Leopard.
Snow Leopard, yes. I want to explore the truth of family value. And I want to explore the philosophy of life. That's the motivation why I want to spend 3 years to do this movie. My first 4 movies, a little bit dark, brutal, and use movie to explore the humanity of a human being. I hope all my movies through my career, from the first one to the last one, all my movie has a heart. For me, movie making is my religion, is my belief.
Culture Express. See the world in color.
And you're watching Culture Express on CGTN. The British Library has, for the first time, brought some of its most iconic English literary treasures to China, starting with a major exhibition at Beijing's National Library of China from April the 21st. What can we learn from the manuscripts about famous writers from Shakespeare to Conan Doyle? How has the British Library been preserving them? Our correspondent Zhang Yong had a chance to visit the library before they were sent to China.
The literary icons on exhibition range from Charles Dickens' manuscript for Nicholas Nickleby and Charlotte Bronte's fair copy manuscript of Jane Eyre, to an early quarto edition of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet and Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes' tale, The Adventure of the Missing Three-Quarter.
The first of the unique objects we're sending is William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, in that this is a second published edition, and it's considered to be most true to Shakespeare's original text. And the really exciting thing about this object is that it belonged to King George III. So it comes from our royal collections, the King's Library in Shakespeare's lifetime.
On the manuscript of Jane Eyre, the female writer Charlotte Bronte used a male pseudonym, Curl Bell.
And the reason why she wanted a male pseudonym was for two reasons. One, she felt she'd be taken more seriously as a male writer, and two, she didn't want people that she knew identifying themselves in her stories.
The original manuscript of Charles Dickens has a lot of corrections and changes, showing us how the famous writer was working on his story.
And what's really wonderful about this manuscript is that there's lots and lots of textual changes, so it really shows him working. He's thinking, he's working as he's writing.
Unlike Charles Dickens, the manuscript of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's The Adventure of the Missing Three-Quarter hardly shows any trace of change.
And what's absolutely fantastic about this, he's got really neat handwriting. People thought initially that it was a fair copy and that he was writing up for the publisher, but we actually don't think that's the case. We just think he was very, very neat.
As some of these manuscripts or early editions have lasted for several hundred years, how has the British Library been preserving them?
All of our manuscripts are kept in climate-controlled areas. They're in sort of very highly secure areas as well, so we make sure that there's very restricted access to them as well. But we also aim to have everything digitised so people can actually view them online as well. I can't go into detail about the security, but obviously everything will be sort of very highly protected.
Many people may also be interested in how these iconic treasures have ended up in the British Library.
They come to the library in lots of different ways. For example, the Shakespeare actually came to us from King George III's collection. The Jane Eyre manuscript, that came directly to us via the publishing company that published the novel. The Sherlock Holmes was presented to us in 1959 on the centenary of the birth of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, so the May the 22nd, 1959. And then the Dickens, it actually came from somebody that worked as part of the printers, but it then came up for auction and we bought that in the 20th century.
In terms of the impact of these English literary icons in China, the head of culture and learning of the British Library, Jamie Andrews, has high expectations.
These kinds of projects are absolutely crucial for developing those longer-term, wider partnerships between those two great countries, UK and China. But especially important for us is perhaps the behind-the-scenes element of the project, which is what we call the knowledge exchange element of the project. It's working with colleagues in libraries and museums and other cultural organisations in China. We're learning from them, they're learning from us, and together we're going to be able to create further long-term sustainable projects.
The exhibition, which runs until June the 21st, has also launched a much wider 3-year program of cultural exchange. Made possible by £1.6 million of funding from the UK government, the program includes a series of exhibitions that will subsequently be held at various locations around China, including Wuzhen, Shanghai and Hong Kong, through to 2019.
And we turn to someone who might also be on your library bookshelf. Honored as the Shakespeare of the Orient, Cao Yu was one of the most outstanding Chinese playwrights of the 20th century. His best-known works include Thunderstorm, Sunrise, and Peking Man. It was largely through his efforts that modern Chinese spoken theater took root in the Chinese literature. Cao Yu passed away in late 1996 at the age of 86. 21 years on, his daughter Wan Fan, who is also a playwright, joined us to regale her favorite stories about the drama master and explain how she remembers him in her own special way.
我听见远处井台上
One day during this year's Qingming Festival, Wan Fang and her elder sister Huan visited her father's tomb. In front of the headstone, Fang read a passage from her playwright work, The Savage Land.
Papa, every time I came to see you in the graveyard, I briefed you on something I had done lately. Now I want to tell you that my drama work, The New Wilderness, will be staged very soon.
The third daughter of Cao Yu, Fang was hugely influenced by her father. Her talent for writing developed from an early age, and she went on to become a playwright, novelist, and screenwriter. She still keeps many of her father's manuscripts.
This is very precious. It's the draft of Peking Man in 1941. At that time, my father lived apart from us. When he finished his work, he would post the manuscript to us and ask my mom to sort it out and copy it. My mom used to be the first reader of his works, and she was the prototype of the character Su Fang in Peking Man.
Cao Yu was born in 1910, but was originally named Wan Jiabao. When he was 19, he began to study Western languages and literature at Beijing's Tsinghua University. 4 years later, he finished his first dramatic work, Thunderstorm. Shortly after its publication, a production of the play was mounted in numerous cities, and several film adaptations have since been made. It's considered a milestone in China's modern theatrical ascendancy, with many people astounded that 23-year-old could produce such an intensive work.
My father wrote A Thunderstorm at the age of 23. I'm also a playwright, and it seems incredible to me. When I was 23, I could think of nothing so deep and touching.
In the years that followed, Cao Yu would go on to complete his most influential plays, such as The Peking Man, The Wilderness, and Sunrise. He was also quite active socially and was the founder of Beijing People's Art Theatre. However, he often found it hard to concentrate around this time, and his search for inspiration would cast him into deep agony and self-blame. In 1983, an old friend of his, the famed painter Huang Yongyu, sent him a letter harshly highlighting the deficiencies in his most recent works.
I don't like the plays you wrote after the liberation, any one of them. Your heart was not in them. You have lost your muse and inspiration. You've been occupied with your status.
But in the face of such personal criticism, instead of being bitter, Cao Yu cherished his friend's honesty and sent back a gracious reply.
You blamed me on my work's emptiness in recent decades. You noted my creations were not from my heart. Those remarks struck home.
I will remember when I came back home that day, he called me to his side quite excitedly and showed me the letter from Huang Yongyu. He read the letter once and again. He said those words could only come from a true friend, and they were just the same words he had repeated to himself endless times.
Cao Yu was hospitalized in 1988 because of renal failure. It was there that he conceived several plays, but none of them got past the opening couple of scenes. His sudden inability to write seemed to bring him more pain than the illness itself. Cao Yu's perseverance greatly inspired Fang. Her novel, The Savage Land, was published during Cao Yu's hospitalization. It marked a turning point for her, and for it, she received her father's recognition.
When I entered the world, I saw the glitter in his eyes. He summoned me to his side and grasped my hand, saying, "Little Fang, you can really write. You really can." Just a few words, but I understood that he thought I could make a living from it. And from that moment, I knew that I could take writing as a career.
Since then, Fang has put her heart and soul into creating novels, film scripts, and screenplays. She established a reputation with well-known works Black Eyes, the TV series Nothing in the Mirror, and the stage drama Poison. For her, writing is more than just a way of living. It allows her to stay connected with her father, a means of communication, even though the two are worlds apart.
He's a sincere and honest man. I'm lucky to have such a father. I really miss him very much. He was so close to me. It's my supreme happiness to have a father like him.
Still to come on Culture Express. We talked to a lady who, after being let go from her job at the age of 43, turned onto a craft which had been in her family for generations and has become a master at it.
There was a time when many Chinese people thought that foreigners who worked in China are all English teachers. This was because back in the 90s, or even earlier, foreigners who were allowed to work in China were all experts in their fields, and people didn't see them often. As the globalization goes on, foreigners are doing all kinds of jobs in China, even being an internet sensation. On this week's crossover, we talk about these foreign expats' life in China. Stay tuned.
A land full of natural resources and ingenuity, where millions are embracing a vibrant middle class, divided by politics, but united by hope. Latin America is changing rapidly. Witness the change on America's Now.
Culture Express. See the world in color.
And you're watching Culture Express on CGTN. International Labor Day is just around the corner, and today we meet the hardworking Li Fengyin, who learned how to weave bamboo at the age of 43 when she was laid off. Now she's one of the most highly regarded folk artisans. Here's more.
Flower baskets and plates. These fine, exquisite items are all made from bamboo. And the master artisan Li Fengyin has been perfecting the craft for 15 years.
When I was 43 years old, I got laid off from my work, so I had to find something to do to provide my family. Eventually, I took up the skill, which has been passed down from my ancestors, and now it's become my career and my passion.
Li's skills are uncanny. She can divide a centimeter-wide bamboo into 42 parts and paint on them. She also redefined a complex procedure which includes more than 20 steps to make specialized bamboo products. She now owns 2 national patents. And her name has reached far and wide. Her products are being sold to countries as far away as Singapore, the US, and Canada.
I made 2 identical bamboo paintings a few years ago. One was sold in Singapore for more than 160,000 yuan. The other collected by the Hubei Provincial Museum.
And although she's very proud in how she reinvented herself, she understands she had a lot of support.
My work and skill have brought me a certain sense of accomplishment. I'm very happy, but there is a little regret that since I took it up, I haven't spent enough time with my grandson. I have to thank my family for their understanding and support. I couldn't have done it without them.
Liu Wenwen, CGTN.
An artisan indeed. After London, Paris, Dubai, and Seoul, the Wonderland exhibition has made its Shanghai debut at the Power Station of Art. Like the fairy tale Alice in Wonderland, a journey through this exhibition offers a peek into the quietly conceptual world of a French fashion house. Zhang Lingben has the story.
Walking sticks, magic light, and coat hangers. Inspired by the 19th century Paris, the exhibition showcases 11 independent, yet connected spaces that display furniture, clothes, accessories, and contemporary artworks from Paris. The exhibition also pays homage to the French spirit of la flânerie, or to dream freely. To inspire Chinese dreamers, the exhibition also features artist Wen Na, who created a Paris-Shanghai mural. Through different mythical characters, her graffiti-like piece integrates Chinese and Western culture.
因为我画的作品的主要的形式都是一些神仙为主题。
My artwork always shows distinctive mythical Chinese characters. I feel the characters I used strongly representative each culture. This painting showcases those characters from different countries gathered together at a Paris metro station, and each one of them is holding a ticket that goes from Paris to Shanghai.
然后他们每个人手里都拿着一张地铁票。 这个地铁票就是从巴黎到上海。
The exhibition runs until May the 28th, with tickets priced at 20 yuan each. Zhang Lingben, ISIS for CGTN, Shanghai.
Can't wait to get a hold of that ticket. And that's all the time we have for today's Culture Express. Before we go, we'll leave you with a ticket-free access to a 5-month-old polar bear at Ohio's Columbus Zoo and Aquarium. I'm Julian Walken in Beijing. Stay tuned for more CGTN news coming up next.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello from Beijing. You're watching The World Today on CGTN with me, Jiao Yang. The Chinese Foreign Ministry has opposed a visit by Philippine Defense Secretary Delphine Lorenzana to a contested island in the South China Sea. Lorenzana flew to Zhongye Island on Friday, saying the visit was normal. But China has said the visit does not follow the consensus reached by the two countries to deal with South China Sea issues. The Foreign Ministry said that China hopes the Philippines will honor an agreement reached by Presidents Xi Jinping and Rodrigo Duterte to maintain peace in the region and allow ties to develop healthily. China has criticized the visit by dozens of Japanese lawmakers to Japan's Yasukuni Shrine for the War Dead, regarded as a symbol of Japan's past militarism.
China has always firmly opposed these kinds of acts by Japanese politicians. Japan should abide by the spirit of the four political documents between the two countries and implement their four-point agreement reached in 2014. We urge Japan to reflect on its history of aggression and draw a line under militarism. Japan should earn the trust of its neighbors and the international community through action.
Around 95 Japanese lawmakers, along with an aide to Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, visited the Yasukuni Shrine. Abe sent a ritual offering to the site. The Japanese Prime Minister visited the shrine in person in December 2013 after taking office the previous year. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has attended the foreign ministers' meeting of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in the capital of Kazakhstan, Astana. Wang said the organization has maintained steady growth since it was founded. After accepting India and Pakistan as member states, the SCO will become the most populous regional international organization covering the widest territory. Wang also met his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov. He said that China and Russia have maintained close contact on regional and international issues, and that the two countries will continue to deepen cooperation, paving the way for next month's Belt and Road Forum, which will take place in Beijing. Investigators in France have found a note defending Islamic State next to the body of the gunman who opened fire on police officers on Thursday. One officer was killed and two others wounded in the incident on the iconic Champs-Élysées. Local media named the attacker as 39-year-old French national Karim Cherfi, who was arrested in February for allegedly plotting to kill police officers, but then released due to a lack of evidence. 3 members of Cherfi's family have since been arrested, and another man suspected of being linked to the attack turned himself in to the police. The attack happened just days before presidential election, which will be held on Sunday, with Prime Minister Bernard Cazeneuve announcing that more than 50,000 police officers will be deployed to ensure security. We spoke earlier to Associated Press reporter Angela Charlton, who explained more about the authorities' response to this incident.
Marine Le Pen has stirred up fears of Islamic extremism throughout this presidential campaign. And the Prime Minister, like some other mainstream politicians, is very concerned about this. They're concerned that that could drive more voters toward Marine Le Pen in Sunday's election. Cazeneuve the President, Francois Hollande, have called for unity, and they're calling for the exact opposite. They want people to come out and vote for more conciliatory candidates and not go to the extremes.
Certain presidential candidates made the choice of outrage and division. Marine Le Pen is asking for the immediate restoration of our national borders. She appears to ignore that it is this government that re-established control of the borders. François Fillon recommends the creation of 10,000 police officer posts. How to believe this? A candidate who, when he was Prime Minister, got rid of 13,000 security forces, when during this 5-year term 9,000 were created, with a large number in the intelligence services.
Well, France is already under a state of emergency that's been in place since 2015. There have been several attacks here over the last few years, and already for this presidential election, there are 50,000 security forces who will be out in force around the country, protecting prominent sites, tourist sites, but also the 70,000 voting stations. So President Francois Hollande had a special security meeting this morning where he took stock of the plans that they have. They made some adjustments, and they came out afterwards and vowed that they've mobilized everyone they possibly could to protect this election.
Prosecutor Francois Molon is currently giving an update in Paris on the investigation into Thursday's shooting. Just a reminder, a gunman killed one police officer and injured two others.
One who was slightly wounded. Finally, a female passerby was very slightly wounded by shrapnel from bullets. Following the discovery of his papers, it was corroborated and identified him as being Karim Shafi, born on the 31st of December 1977 in the department of Seine-Saint-Denis. Consultations with the police highlighted 2 bullet impacts and 4 impacts on the back windows. A piece of paper discovered close to Karim Shafi's body shows that he probably had in his pocket carried a message, a handwritten message supporting Daesh or Islamic State. Several other pieces of paper were then found between the 2 seats of the vehicle that supported the addresses of several police services. Finally, in the framework, in the boots of the vehicle, there was a large black sports bag which contained a caliber 12 and various other weapons that were in the boot of the vehicle. These were papers that corresponded with the weapons that were found on the spot, as well as that his telephone. 4 people who were close to him were found when there was a raid, have now been arrested and are in detention. The identity of the author was known by the police services and justice services, as well as in January 2017, the Anti-Terrorist Prosecutor's Office found elements to show that Karim Shafi had weapons and had plans that he wanted to kill police officers. In the absence of known elements of radicalization, the terror in the interest and in consultation with the Anti-Terrorist Prosecutor's Office and following an inquiry of the 13th of January 2017 under common law and association of wrongdoers, where there was an inquiry was confided in the judicial police. Karim Shafi was then put under house arrest on the 24th of February 2017, and his home was raided. He appeared in this inquiry via internet, where there were knives, masks, and a camera which were found. These elements were not sufficient at that stage of the inquiry to characterize them as threats of a wrongdoer who was being sought after. The detention was therefore lifted against Karim Shafi, and moreover the judicial interception as well as the exploitation of computer material, using of computer material in his home remained vague. In particular, the investigators were not able to find any trace of documents or consultation of sites. Nevertheless, at this stage of the inquiry, no link had been made with Islamic fundamentalist movements. The previous antecedents, which I'm going to come back to in a few moments, justified the pursuing of investigations with the anti-terrorist section, which became terrorist, of the head of the individual terrorist enterprise in the framework of an inquiry that was opened on the 19th of March 2017. I'd like to clarify that Karim Shafi had 4 accusations. The first one was 15 years imprisonment for attempts at murder, and against public order. 6th of April 2001, attemptations at assassination or murder. 2 days later, he was detained. Second condemnation was in 2008, April 2008. 3 months imprisonment for violence without incapacity against a person from the penitentiary administration, which was committed on 20th of May 2007. The next third one was in November 2009 in Versailles Court, 18 months imprisonment for violence aggravated by 2 circumstances committed on the 16th of August 2008. The fourth was on the 9th of July 2014 by the Correctional Court. 4 years imprisonment, including 2 years suspended sentence for 2 years for theft, for robbery, including theft and repeated crimes committed on the 13th of October 2013. To summarize, Karim Shafii was found on the basis of all these decisions on 9th of April 2001 in the framework of the criminal procedure deliberated of a conditional freedom in 2012, 11 years later, and were then admitted to conditional freedom on bail. He was then imprisoned again on 15th of November 2013 because of what he'd committed 2 days before. The judicial institution also draws the conclusions of his repeated crimes, which were consecutively revoked. When it comes down to it, he came out of detention following these crimes on the 14th of October 2013 and was the subject then of a 4 years, including 2 years suspended sentence, was the object of a follow-up with the application by the High Court. I'd like to clarify that the court, following the detention in February 2017, seized the judge with the application following the fact that it appeared that he had left for Algeria on the 15th of January to the 14th of February 2017. He said that he had gone to get married. The applications against Karim Shafii show that he presented himself before his judge in April 2017, 7th of April 2017, and then the judge reminded him of his commitments without proceeding to revoking his bail. I'd like to clarify that Karim Shafii was not on the watch list throughout these 14 years. He was not on the list of radicalized, and there were no signs of radicalization throughout all these years of detention. Investigations, therefore, will determine from now on the specific context.
French prosecutor François Molins there giving an update on Thursday's attack on police in Paris. Now, he did name the gunman as Karim Shafii. He was known to police, and he did say that there was no definitive link yet to Islamic State, but though a note was found on the gunman pledging support for the militant group. Now, we do have to leave it here for the program. I'm Jiao Yang in Beijing on behalf of the World Today team here in Beijing. Thank you so much for watching. Bye for now.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hey, welcome and thank you for joining us on China 24. I'm Li Qiuyuan in Beijing. Coming up on tonight's program. More tasks await for the cargo spacecraft Tianzhou-1 now that it's in orbit. We'll take a look at its ambitious to-do list. It's the Pitsap in North China, as massive sewage plants cause widespread water pollution, affecting the communities living close by. Changing the game. Northeast China is set to dramatically transform itself as it moves away from the traditional model of natural resources extraction. Plus, it's a whole new car competition as automobile makers try to win over the hearts and wallets of Chinese with specially made models. And we begin tonight with China's latest step towards the goal of completing its space station. After the successful launch on Thursday evening, China's first cargo spacecraft Tianzhou-1 is now in orbit and has completed its second orbit control to adjust to its track. It will carry out more of such adjustments before its first docking with the Tiangong-2 Space Laboratory on Saturday. The unmanned Tianzhou-1 is set for 3 docking attempts with the Space Lab, which was sent into orbit last September. The cargo craft will fuel the facility at each docking attempt to test resupply technology. Multiple experiments will also be carried out during its additional 3-month stay in space after the docking process. And for more on this, we can go live to our reporter Tang Bo, who is live in Beijing, who has been closely following the space mission. Great to have you with us, Tang Bo. Now, we know that the Tianzhou-1 is set for 3 dockings with the Tiangong-2 Space Lab. Tell us more about that process. What can we expect?
Well, during the mission, the logistic cargo vehicle will make 3 rendezvous attempts with Tiangong-2 Space Lab. The first trial will take place tomorrow at noon Beijing time. Then the combined operations with the Tiangong-2 and Tiangong-1 orbital complex will take place for 2 months. At the end of this period, the cargo spaceship will separate from Tiangong-2 Space Lab and will initiate an autonomous orbital mission for 3 months to carry out experiments and tests. After that, the cargo craft will make the second rendezvous attempt with the Space Lab from a different direction. The last rendezvous and docking attempt will be done in no more than 6 hours rather than the usual 2 days. That is something only Russia can do so far. Earlier, I talked to one of the deputy chief designers of the Tianzhou-1 cargo spaceship to know more about the mission and the difficulties we face to conduct the 6-hour rendezvous and docking. Let's take a listen. Compared to other cargo spaceships in the world, what's special about Tianzhou-1?
The loading rate of Tianzhou-1 is 0.48, so it has reached international advanced standards, and some homemade core components of the cargo spaceship will be tested during the mission. That is very important for building our space station in the future. If the tests are passed, it will mean that we can have an independent core component manufacturing system. Besides, the flying of the spaceship will be controlled by a 3-station system instead of the usual ground and sea-based methods. With the help of some relay satellites, the extra space-based control system can greatly expand the view and control area.
There will be 3 rendezvous and docking experiments between the cargo spaceship and the Space Lab, and the third one will be completed in no more than 6 hours rather than the usual 2 days. So from 2 days to 6 hours, what are the difficulties faced?
The old method takes at least 2 days to conduct a rendezvous and docking, and we have to do a lot of calculation work in advance to find the best orbit for the cargo spaceship to catch up with its target, the Tiangong-2 Space Lab. This mission, we have only 6 hours, which is 8 times less than usual. So that means a lot more work on orbit calculation and on guidance, navigation, and control preparation.
And how is the 6-hour docking experiment significant?
Once we succeed in doing 6-hour rendezvous and docking procedures, we would be able to better cope with any emergencies in our future space projects. For example, the evacuation of space station crew or offering emergency supplies to space labs or space stations. And a 6-hour trip is much better than that of 2 days, when the technology is applied to the rendezvous and docking of manned spacecraft.
At the end of the mission, Tianzhou-1 will burn up during its re-entry into Earth's atmosphere. The designer also told me that China will try to make its own recyclable cargo spaceship in the future. Qiuyuan.
And tell me, what are the other highlights of this mission? How crucial is it to China's space station development?
Well, Tianzhou-1 can carry a payload of more than 6 tons, twice that of the vessels built by Russia and the US. Japan has also developed a craft of a smaller size, but it needs a robotic arm to catch it and dock with the International Space Station. The European Space Agency developed a spaceship that could carry a larger load than Tianzhou-1, but it is no longer in service. Tianzhou-1 is going to refuel Tiangong-2 Space Lab, something only European Space Agency and Russia can do. The US hasn't done it yet. Besides, the Tianzhou-1 is the lightest cargo spaceship ever made due to the widespread use of new alloys and carbon fibers. According to China's space authorities, the success of Tianzhou-1 will complete the Space Lab phase, and China then can start building its own space station. Qiuyuan.
Thank you so much, Tom, for joining us in downtown Beijing. Now, a delegation of foreign envoys have visited the Wenchang Space Launch Center and witnessed the Tianzhou-1 launch. Our reporter Go Yunfei has more.
As Tianzhou-1 blasted off to space on Thursday night, a top official of China's Manned Space Engineering Office announced that the country's space program has stepped into a new era.
In China's 3-stage manned space program, this launch marks the end of the 2nd stage of the launch mission and officially starts the next stage of constructing our space station.
Thursday's successful launch was witnessed by some members of the international community. On the invitation of China's Foreign Ministry, Ms. Di Pipo, the director of the United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs, and ambassadors of Indonesia, the Philippines, Pakistan, Malaysia, South Africa, and Kazakhstan, and watched the liftoff.
It's really an exciting and important step in the realization of China's great endeavor, so the Chinese space station. And it is indeed an admirable effort in scientific and technological capability.
Step by step, China is moving forward. So this is something remarkable for the whole world.
The successful launch of Tianzhou-1 marks a milestone for China's manned space mission. After witnessing the rocket blasting off from the Wenchang Space Launch Center, foreign envoys told me that they are looking forward to more cooperation with China on the field of space exploration. Zhang Yulin said China's future space station will be open to the international community without conditions.
We're equally open to the whole world, including the leading space powers and developing countries. There is no limit. We welcome any country that has the need of conducting space experiments.
Zhang said China will remain committed to the peaceful use of outer space and provide more opportunities for developing countries to take part in China's space achievements. Go Yunfei, CGTN, Wenchang Space Launch Center.
To other news now, the Ministry of Environmental Protection says it has sent 2 teams to investigate 3 polluted sewage pits left untreated in the middle of farmlands in North China's Hebei province and Tianjin. Local authorities were also ordered to intensify monitoring and soil quality in and around the area. According to authorities in Dacheng County in Hebei province, 2 polluted pits were formed as a result of digging and illegal dumping of waste acid since 2013, contaminating water and soil in the area. In Tianjin in 2013, 18 sewage pits were found in the district of Jinghai. Authorities have cleaned up 17 of them, leaving one 190,000 square meter pit unfinished. The investigation team has demanded Dacheng's government to finish the cleanup by the end of September and urged the government of Jinghai district to do the same by the end of July. The sewage pits have been known to pollute groundwater, rendering it undrinkable. Our reporter Ning Hong visited some villages near these pits to find out more about the extent of this damage.
Poisoned dark water is left to dry in the open air. Ponds like this stretch a long distance and cover a vast area. You could see that there are 2 different distinctive
colors of these 2 ponds beside me. And for example, this one is green, and on the other side, and this is red, very dark, and couldn't see the bottom of the water. Even the water is very shallow. And local people told us that it has been like this for decades.
One local resident told us such ponds are the result of chemical plants that used to be here.
That used to be a chemical fertilizer plant, and that used to be a phosphate fertilizer plant, and that's a lime factory.
Plants such as these have been dumping waste here for years, and even though they're gone now, the pollution remains. This area is heavily populated. Just a kilometer away is a small town named Nanzhaofu. Villagers living here are angry about pollution.
Someone allowed trucks to dump their waste here and charge them.
The water is contaminated. If you don't believe, you can come here and have a taste.
With no regulations or measures in place, groundwater is also tainted. Water from wells less than 300 meters deep is rendered undrinkable.
Well, the water, the fresh water they use, it's like someone put salt in it. It's very salty. This is fresh water. Actually, they've been using this to cook and they drink from this. A lot of people drink from this. Very salty. Very salty.
The local government has been trying to draw water from other regions, yet the plan hasn't been put into practice. There's no other source of water to be had, and most villagers have no choice but to continue drinking polluted water. They're complaining that they may get cancer in the long run. Ning Hong, CGTN, Dacheng County.
Now, for more on this, we're joined on the phone by Mr. Ma Jun. He's the director of the Institute of Public and Environmental Affairs. Thank you for joining us. Now, what's the most urgent priority in cleaning up these sewage pits to you?
Yeah, I think the most urgent, obviously, is to prevent further contamination of the soil and aquifer in that region and prevent further impact on public health. So it means that we need to drain the water, the wastewater out of that pit for proper treatment, and then dig out the soil for proper disposal. But the challenge for that is the lack of detailed and accurate information about what has been dumped into that. We roughly, the only case confirmed is that two farmers dumped some 6 tons of waste acid into that. I mean, that's far from being enough to cause such a severe contamination to the pit. So what about those chemical fertilizers, years of dumping, or some say it's electronic plating dumping by that. That will involve heavy metals and those toxic substances. So without this information, it's getting quite challenging to try to clean it up.
So just having said that, how serious is the soil pollution in China as a whole?
Yeah, as a whole, we now got the general statistics from the environmental agency stating that roughly about 20% of the cropland in China got contaminated, and that's a rather significant proportion. The reason for this is it's coming from all different sources, air, water, and airborne, waterborne, and different sources. But this, to try to dispose industrial wastewater through digging a pit to seepage this directly into the soil and aquifer, that's the worst case of that would damage the soil, because usually this type of industrial waste will contain heavy metals and sometimes persistent organic compounds, which will be very, very unhealthy to the very damaging to public health.
It is an alarming situation. Thank you very much for your insights, Mr. Ma Jun, joining us on the line. Meantime, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov in the capital of Kazakhstan, Astana, on Friday. During the meeting, Wang said that China and Russia have maintained close contact on regional and international issues, including an investigation into alleged chemical weapon attacks in Syria and the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Wang also said that the two countries will continue to deepen cooperation, paving the way for next month's Belt and Road Forum, which takes place in Beijing. And now you're watching China 24 on CGTN. Still to come. It's a fierce competition in the automobile sector, and the winner is the one which can convince the rising Chinese consumer class to part with their money. Plus, one city in southwest China still clings on to their age-old tradition of freelance porters. But how long more will this practice persist? That's next.
The world's currencies are more connected than ever before. The mechanisms that drive the economy are universal. Money moves markets. We explain these trends and show you how the cash in your pocket can have a wide-reaching effect. Because money makes the world go round. Global business.
Welcome back. A former employee at the Shenzhen Stock Exchange, Feng Xiaoshu, who was also a member of the Stock Issuance Examination Committee, has been fined 499 million yuan for illegal trading. He has also received a lifetime ban on further market activities. According to the stock exchange's spokesperson, Feng bought pre-IPO company shares in the name of his relatives before selling off the stock after the company listed. Total trading volume reached 251 million yuan, and Feng's profit amounted to 248 million yuan. The central government has pledged to prevent and crack down on illegal insider trading in order to promote a healthy market. Well, China is introducing a pilot scheme for industrial upgrading. According to a document issued by authorities, the country will support 12 of its old industrial bases to establish pilot zones. Among them, one particular area of focus is northeast China, where the economy was once heavily dependent on the exploitation of natural resources and large state-owned enterprises. CGTN's Guangyang has more details from Shenyang, the capital city of the northeastern Liaoning province.
China's economic growth is on the path to achieve more balanced growth, but some regions that face stronger headwinds need to quicken up the pace of structural transformation, like the Northeast, where the legacy of the Soviet-style planned economy still exists, and the natural resources like coal and oil are slowly depleted. For instance, the city of Daqing, China's biggest oil field, saw its GDP shrink for the first time in 30 years in 2015 after a collapse in crude oil prices, while the cities of Jixi and Qitaihe also saw their economies weaken due to the decline in coal consumption. So as China is shifting its growth pillars away from the resource-based economy toward consumption and innovation, Northeast China, the old industrial base, has been stuck in a development dilemma. It is urgent for the region to restructure and improve efficiency. Last year, the central government has launched certain policies and provided financial support to facilitate the transition. It has invested 1.6 trillion yuan in over 130 projects across the region. That is more than half of Thailand's GDP in the year 2015. In other words, what the country's policymakers are trying to do is to utilize these investments in infrastructure and public facilities to pave the way for an alternative growth model. And the setup of the Liaoning Freight Trade Zone is in line with these principles. It can help to enable the market to play a full role in the allocation of resources and to allow the private sector to have equal opportunities when comparing to the large SOEs. Wenyang, CGTN, Shenyang, Liaoning Province.
And China's foreign ministry has expressed serious concerns and dissatisfaction after reports on Friday that Philippine Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana and other government and military officials had visited Thitu Island in the South China Sea. In other news, old industrial bases in China have been achieving growth ever since the planning, adjustment, and transformation of the old industrial base was put into motion in 2013. Among old industrial bases, Daqing City in China's northeastern Heilongjiang province is on the verge of transformation. The city's GDP proportion of petroleum industry benefits dropped to around 25% from previous 50%. On a whole, in Harbin, the GDP proportion of its extractive industry dropped to less than 8% from previous 24%. Daqing has seen an increase in personal income. Urban and rural residents have seen an increase in personal incomes of over 20,000 yuan and 10,000 yuan respectively in 2016. In a bid to revitalize the city, the old industrial base is now focusing on technological innovation, city infrastructure, and talent recruitment. And elsewhere in the Shanghai Auto Show, car brands are showing their ever higher ambitions to win over the hearts and wallets of China's rising image-conscious consumer class by rolling out new sports sedans.
Across major auto shows in China, it's become commonplace for car makers to show their commitments to this market. Like Audi and Cadillac, Porsche is launching their tailor-made sports sedan for China.
Yeah, we are presenting 3 new models of the Panamera, one especially for China. The new Panamera Executive is along our wheelbase.
It's not a coincidence that they deem the sports sedan segment promising. Experts say China's burgeoning young middle-class families want comfort, sportiness, and something a bit more than just practicality.
Number one among the Chinese consumers of importance is image. Yeah, they'll pay a lot of money to project the right image to their family and to their friends.
Alfa Romeo, one of the oldest European car brands, is also trying to seize this trend despite being a latecomer to this market. The company announced its entrance to China by launching 2 cars at the Shanghai Auto Show, a sports sedan Giulia and a sport SUV Stelvio. Now, the specs and designs of this car are critically acclaimed, but it is more expensive than what its German counterparts can offer in the same range. The Giulia is pitted against cars like the BMW 3 Series and the Mercedes-Benz C-Class. Just across the Alfa Romeo stand is the BMW stand, a representative of German car brands that dominate this segment.
I'd say very strong German counterparts, but one of the best things about Alfa Romeo is it's not German, it's Italian, and offers something that's a little bit different.
Is playing the Italian card enough to justify the price premium for China's middle class? That will be left for the market to decide. Foreign car brands launched a total of 44 new cars in the Shanghai Auto Show. The competition is getting more fierce for a market that yearns for freshness and variety. Yang Chengxi, CGTN, Shanghai.
And even though the number of car buyers in China are increasing, car sharing schemes are also booming. According to a recent study, the number of shared vehicles is projected to quadruple in 3 years, from the current 26,000. What does that mean for residents in China's biggest cities and to the overall auto sector? Well, CGTN's Zhao Lingfeng finds out.
For 22-year-old Gao, a car is all about usership rather than ownership. Freshly graduated from college less than a year ago, he enrolled in the car-sharing scheme almost at the same time. And now, he's a regular.
I use shared cars at least 3 or 4 times a week.
Young drivers in their 20s or early 30s like Gao are a key market that car-sharing companies are trying to win over. Because
they all share a same way of thinking, which is they only want to pay for a right to use instead of purchasing a car.
And this idea is fueling a booming market, with local and foreign players quickly joining the camp. Global Car Sharing, or formerly EV Card, is the largest car share scheme in Shanghai.
We provide 20,000 car shares on a daily basis. On weekends, the number can reach 26 or 27,000.
There are more than 5,000 share cars just like this ones on the streets of Shanghai right now. But with such a booming market, one question arises. Will the residents in China's biggest cities need a car of their own in the future?
It will replace a certain degree of the customers in terms of a car purchase need.
But after a study he's recently done, the bottom line he found out.
The multi-dimensional need of a personal usage car, it is still, I would say, a bit difficult.
But still, how much will that reduce one's desire to own a car?
One car sharing model can make, 5 customers that cancel their buying intention.
And the possible impact on personal car sales.
Until 2025, there will be about 10 to 15 sales volume will be reduced because of the car sharing.
And that also reflects Gao's thought for now, investing money saved from buying a car into something else in his career and life. Zhao Lingfeng, CGTN, Shanghai.
Well, the market of global luxury cars is huge, and in China, those contributing to it are getting younger and younger. The average age of luxury car buyers in China is 33 years old, 10 years younger than the average American luxury car buyers. Most of these Chinese buyers are private entrepreneurs, freelancers, senior executives of major corporations, and high-paying white-collar workers. China is also seeing a trend of taking out car loans to afford these luxury automobiles. Over 30% of luxury car buyers took out a loan in 2015, a 20% jump compared to 2011. It is predicted that this will surpass to 45% in 2018. Let's now take another short break on China 24. Still ahead on the program. A combination of some of the world's brightest minds. Peking University will open a campus in Oxford in what is a milestone and a bold step. Plus, if you can't stand the heat, we find out how one brave couple in northeast China risked their lives to drive a blazing truck out of harm's way. Stay with us.
Are we ready? China, a nation with the largest population on Earth, assuming a greater role economically and politically on the world stage. Understanding China is critical for all, though difficult for some. Behind the scenes of China's transformation, I'm Robert Lawrence Kuhn. Join me to get closer to China.
There was a time when many Chinese people thought that foreigners who worked in China are all English teachers. This was because back in the 90s, or even earlier, foreigners who were allowed to work in China were all experts in their fields, and people didn't see them often. As the globalization goes on, foreigners are doing all kinds of jobs in China, even being an internet sensation. On this week's crossover, we talk about these foreign expats' life in China. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. Students from both Peking University and Oxford University can enroll once the new campus opens. The cooperation between these two world-famous institutions will provide a chance for some of the world's brightest minds to communicate. CGTN's Richard Bestick reports from Oxford.
The new campus itself will be in an old manor house, Foxcombe Hall, surrounded by the lush pastures of the Oxford countryside. It was once owned by the 8th Earl of Berkeley, by trade simultaneously an aristocrat and bizarrely a chemist. The campus today is something of an architectural mishmash, according to a local historian.
It's a mushroom. It grew starting with a tiny beginning, this red brick cottage over here, in 1887, and then Lord Berkeley bought the cottage and added on all these huge stone buildings, and it's grown from there.
For academic purchasers, however, Foxcombe Hall had a unique selling point: its proximity to Oxford, home to the English-speaking world's oldest university. It puts one of China's top universities then at the very heart of Britain's ancient academic traditions. According to international property advisors Savills, Foxcombe Hall's worth every cent of its $11 million price tag.
The reason why it went for the price it did, there was a huge amount of competition. There were probably over 100 interested parties. This opportunity comes up once in a generation, and that's why it went for the price it did.
There's still a lot of work to be done here before the first students move in. This building, for example, the 8th Earl's own private chemist laboratory, is due to be turned into an accommodation block for 100 students and a public cafe for the local villagers.
Once that makeover's complete, sometime next year, elite students from China and around the world will be taking in the charms of the gardens between studies. That they're so close to Oxford's so-called dreaming spires, fully intended as inspiration.
So when students come here, also not in the city center, but they still can be influenced by the culture and atmosphere of Oxford University. And I think that's the most talented Chinese students need to have that influence and the impact and make them be more international and internationalized.
Peking University has described its Oxford campus here as a milestone, a bold step bringing some of China's brightest to swap ideas and a world view in Britain's most ancient seat of learning. Richard Bestick, CGTN, Oxford, England.
So students in the UK will soon be able to attend one of China's best higher education institutions. Now CGTN's He Weiwei has the story.
Peking University HSBC Business School, or PHBS for short, was founded in 2004 in southern China's megacity, Shenzhen. It provides full-time master's and MBA programs. The school is now expanding overseas, having bought a campus in Oxford from the Open University in Britain.
This is the first Chinese university to have an overseas branch school. The new campus will open in summer 2018 and will recruit students from China, the UK and other European countries.
The new campus's course will focus on China's finance and enterprise management. Students will be given the opportunity to study for a year at the Oxford campus and another year in China.
I think it opened up the campus in Oxford itself can increase our visibility and also reputation in the world. China is more integrated to the world economy, so many people, they want to do business with China, they want to understand China better. So we are the first one so far to have an international school which can make them opportunity. So that is our comparative advantage.
This opportunity for international students and for Chinese students having the option to learn in China and in Oxford, it really gives a synergetic benefit for those students as well as for the university.
Peking University is one of China's top universities. It currently has 2 campuses located in the capital Beijing and Shenzhen. The expansion into Oxford will open a new chapter for the institution. He Weiwei, CGTN, Shenzhen.
As modernization advances, some traditions hang on. In southwest China's metropolis, Chongqing, people still more or less rely on freelance porters to carry goods from door to door. But for how much longer? Tao Yan reports.
Yu Xinquan is a skinny man in his late 50s, but he likes to brag about his strength.
Yes, I look thin, but I can shoulder up to 100 kilograms of goods.
That's how he makes a living, or at least tries. Itinerant porters like Yu Xinquan are nicknamed Bang Bang, after the bamboo stick that has become the symbol of their trade. Chongqing was once teeming with them. The city grew from trade up and down the Yangtze River. There's hardly a commodity which hasn't, at one point or another, dangled at either end of a bongbong stick.
These porters represent a generation of rural farmers migrating into the cities, making a living using brute force. But they may well be the last of their flock. China's economy is slowing and the demand for hard labor dwindling. Simply put, there's just no use for them anymore.
They had their heyday. Chongqing is known as China's mountain city, with a labyrinth of steep slopes and staircases connecting the hillside streets. Man has, for a long time, been the most reliable transporters of goods. It was never an easy job, a meager $1 or $2 each assignment. But the bongbongs are nostalgic when they think back.
We were so busy we worked from dawn to dusk. We hardly had time for meals.
It's harder to find money nowadays. The small business owners can't even keep their businesses going. That means we have nothing to load, so we just idle around most of the time.
Nearby, couriers whiz by on their motorcycles, delivering packages. A new generation of migrants, younger and better educated.
Most of us bongbongs are over 50 years of age. Young people won't do this anymore. They won't work the tough jobs, unlike us older folk. We'd do any job to survive.
Not far from where they await work is Chongqing's iconic Liberation Square. Occasionally, a bongbong passes by, seemingly out of place with the modern shopping malls and foreign luxury brands. They no longer belong here. Taoyuan, CGTN, Chongqing.
Well, Yangling is China's only agricultural demonstration district based in China's northwestern Shanxi province. It has a top-level agricultural university. Many programs have international cooperation and exchanges. CGTN's Zheng Yibing reports how this region is set to change research and development.
For Abdul from Pakistan, Yangling meets his study needs. At the age of 26, he has been studying at the Agricultural University here for 2 years, pursuing a master's degree on plant nutrition and its safety.
As I came here to know what are the different ideas, could we reduce the amount of chemical fertilizer?
Like him, students from other South and Central Asian countries hope to learn and exchange.
I want to look at how do you do these experiments and take maybe some things, some maybe tools and instruments to my country.
In its China's only agricultural demonstration district, there are many research and development fields like this.
This special agricultural district has attracted many international visitors. It aims to communicate and exchange experiences in various fields.
There are common grounds for such exchanges. Among the listeners, one is an agricultural engineer from Sri Lanka.
We came here that in fruit orchard to see that irrigation system. It's a micro irrigation system, and we are happily. It's a practical field. We can see and we can learn.
For the communication and exchanges, the Agricultural University in Yangling is confident.
We have developed a lot of agricultural experiences in reducing poverty and raising people's living standards, and the world is paying attention to our knowledge and experiences.
Yangling and its university are expanding international agricultural cooperation. It said that many projects and agricultural parks will be built in China and other countries. Zheng Yibing, CGTN, Yangling.
Now, before I go, let's have a look at what's trending across the country. In preparation for the upcoming Belt and Road Forum, the newly built Silk Road Golden Bridge at the Beijing Olympic Park had its lights tested recently. Look closely at the bricks of the bridge. There are exquisitely carved floral emblems of the countries and cities involved in the initiative. Even passers-by can't help but take selfies in front of this splendid bridge. And remember internet celebrity panda cub Fu Shun? It gained fame after face planting off a stage full of baby pandas last year. Most recently, Fu Shun has been making waves yet again with somewhat of a repeat incident in southwest China's Sichuan province. A recent footage showed his mother taking a bit of a tumble, her furry frame hitting the ground before sliding down a small slope and dragging a cheeky Fu Shun all the way down with her. Perhaps clumsiness into the family. Plus, here's one drive you would never want to have. Now, a couple noticed a burning truck near a fueling station by the road near the town of Quantou in northeast Jieling City. The duo tried to extinguish the fire but couldn't, and without any hesitation, they boarded the blazing truck to drive it to an area where no one was in sight. Well, talking about a brave heart there. And that is it for today's China 24 on CGTN. As always, we welcome you to visit our website at cgtn.com. You can also follow us on social media at CGTN and CGTN Official. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Hello there, here's the latest weather report. I'm Jing Yu. Now first about the wet weather pattern in southern China. We're going to see the rain to be retreating to the farther south, mainly the southern part of Hunan region, and some lingering wet weather in Yunnan province and Hainan and Taiwan on Saturday. Sunday still, while the southern part of Hunan region will receive some light showers and temperatures at the same time in this rain zone will be cool, but the rest of southern China will expect climbing temperatures, especially we see the 25-degree mark is going to cover a very large area as we move on to Sunday. Now we have the Sunday's outlook here. We are forecasting a 24 for Changsha, 25 for Nanchang. We see, well, in this outlook, the lowest day high is going to be in Guangzhou because the location is in that small rain band here and a chance of light shower will be very possible. Now let's come to northeastern China. Currently, we're expecting a cold vortex to be impacting this area. It's going to produce light to moderate showers mainly, and on Sunday, in the northern tip of Heilongjiang province, there will be a chance of snow mixture due to the low temperatures there. And now for much of the northeastern China, the temperatures will be a little bit lower than the average level, 15 for both Harbin and Changchun and 18 for Shenyang on Sunday. That is all for now.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
School children perish in a grisly road accident in South Africa. Why the US could be distancing itself from international efforts to restore peace in Libya. And Morocco's traditional dress in danger of being replaced by modern forms of clothing and efforts to preserve it. Hello and a warm welcome to Africa Live from Nairobi. I am Penina Karibia. Also with me in studio is Ucha with the day's business headlines.
Thanks, Penina. And coming up later on Africa Live Biz, the IMF downplays differences with the US over globalization. And South Africa's ABSA Group triples scholarships for African students to $16 million. Of course, more on that coming up within the program, but for now it's back to you, Penina.
Thank you, Uche. We start on a tragic note in South Africa. At least 20 school children have been killed in a head-on collision on a highway near the capital, Pretoria. The minibus taxi collided with a truck and then burst into flames. CGTN's Olisa Njamela has this update.
The tragedy happened some 50 kilometers east of Pretoria, near a town called Bronkhorstspruit. The minibus ferrying the children hit a truck on a single-lane carriageway and then burst into flames. Some passers-by managed to pull some of the youngsters out of the taxi. But emergency services had to put out the flames before pulling out some of the victims in a burnt wreckage. It's understood that the children are from primary and secondary school. Their driver was also killed in the accident. 7 children suffered various injuries, some critical. South Africa's roads are notorious for deadly accidents, but even so, this particular tragedy stands out. The Education Department has called it, and I quote, a dark day for the country. Olisa Njamela, CGTN, Pretoria, South Africa.
Investigators in France have found a note defending Islamic State next to the body of the gunman who opened fire on police officers on Thursday. One officer was killed and 2 others wounded in the incident on the iconic Champs-Élysées. Local media named the attacker as 39-year-old French national Karim Cherfi, who was arrested in February for allegedly plotting to kill police officers but released due to a lack of evidence. 3 members of Cherfi's family have since been arrested. Another man suspected of being linked to the attack turned himself into the police. The attack happened just days before Sunday's presidential election, with Prime Minister Bernard Cazeneuve announcing that more than 50,000 police officers will be deployed to ensure security. U.S. President Donald Trump says he sees no role for the United States in Libya apart from defeating ISIL. He was speaking at a joint news conference with Italian Prime Minister Paolo Gentiloni. ISIL militants are currently taking advantage of Libya's instability. Trump has reiterated his administration's stance on Libya, stating U.S. efforts in fighting ISIL have been effective so far. Trump's comments follow reports earlier this week that a member of his team had suggested Sebastian Gorka apparently suggested returning Libya to its Ottoman Empire divisions.
I do not see a role in Libya. I think the United States has right now enough roles. We're in a role everywhere. So I do not see that. I do see a role in getting rid of ISIS. We're being very effective in that regard.
Well, that statement came as Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi was seeking to build on his relationship with Donald Trump. El-Sisi has been hosting the U.S. Defense Secretary James Mattis. He wants more military aid from America and backing for in Libya. CGTN's Adel Mahrouri has more from Cairo.
The Egyptian presidency says the meeting was constructive. Cairo receives around $1.3 billion a year in military aid from Washington, D.C. It's seeking more to deal with the insecurity in the Sinai and along its borders with Libya and Gaza.
Military aid is the cornerstone of the U.S.-Egyptian relations. It took a big part of el-Sisi's talk. America has been aiming to decrease its foreign aid, and that has created some fears in Egypt. So Egypt is very keen to at least keep the aid at its current level, if not increased.
Fighting ISIL in Iraq, Syria and Libya is among President Donald Trump's priorities in the Middle East. He wants Egypt more involved, but al-Sisi wants a significant change in Washington's policy towards Libya. Egypt supports Libyan military strongman Khalifa Haftar, who opposes the UN-backed government in Tripoli, and it wants more international